Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Weber, and today we have an extraordinary privilege coming to us from New York State, international broadcaster and astrologer Mary Houston. Welcome, Mary.
Welcome, Alfred. It's so nice to be on the air with you again, as we were so many years ago, starting global revolution.
Just some for our viewers. Mary has a distinguished career as an international broadcaster and was a pioneer in international broadcasting from Russia, starting in the glasnost years on mainstream media coming out of Russia into the Western world. And that came after a lifelong career of hers as a radio talk show host with WBAI-FM in New York, which is an NPR affiliated station. And as Mary mentioned, 30 years ago this year, it's hard to believe it was 30 years ago. This is 2017. And in 1987, Mary and I produced the Instant of Cooperation, which was the first live radio program between the United States and the then Soviet Union. And on the Russian side, it was aired in all 11 time zones of Russia under Gosla Radio. And on the US side, it was carried by, it was anchored in WBAI in the studios of WNYC and up on the NPR National Public Radio satellite, and many of the NPR stations downloaded, as did the Voice of America, as you recall.
Right.
And we had Allen Ginsberg, the American poet, speaking to Alina Akhmatova, the Russian poet, and we had all kinds. We had people crying on the phone. We had people in Jersey City talking to people on the street in Moscow, and they were crying. It was actually the meltdown of the Iron Curtain, I think, on the air.
Yes, and when I went to Russia, I visited some psychics in St. Petersburg, and psychics in Russia are a little bit on a different level than psychics in the U.S. I thought about that a lot over the years, why that was so. And, you know, when you met somebody new in Russia, you had to really size them up. You know, you didn't know if they were a KGB agent, whether they're going to tell on you and the KGB is going to come to your house and take you out at night. And the 2 years that I traveled back and forth there, I never met one family, and I met hundreds of them, who didn't lose a family member where the KGB had taken them away, often, you know, just in the middle of the night, or for all kinds of reasons. So people were very wary, and my all my interpreters that I had and the students that hung out with us from, or were assigned to us by the KGB from Moscow University, very brilliant. I mean, spoke 5 languages. Mine was the sweetest 22-year-old with an 18-month-old baby, spoke 5 languages, majored in economics, was the Russian national sword champion. And I taught them all how to meditate. He meditated first time and he saw the blue pearl in his third eye. I mean, people meditate for lifetimes and don't see it. They saw their chakras. They didn't know what they were. I mean, they were so internal all the time because they had to be, that their psychic abilities were very marked. So anyway, getting back to the topic at hand, this psychic told me that what actually happened when we did these radio shows, that we were laying an energetic network for the light to travel. That's what really was the point.
Amazing.
And so we created this network of light by doing that, you know? And so that was really interesting to me. But, you know, if you get a chance in this lifetime, everybody should visit Russia, because I'm sure it's still as funny there as it was to me. I mean, I never laughed so much. I'm crying and crying, laughing simultaneously. I mean, it's like a Laurel and Hardy movie run backwards. That's what it's like there. If you see a sign to go to the bathroom, it's not in the direction the sign is pointing, it's in the other direction. If a museum says it's open, it's usually closed. I mean, I'm sure it's a little better now, but it was just so sad and funny, you know. I mean, I got more marriage proposals in a 24-hour period than I've had in several lifetimes, because I was an American, you know, which meant they could come back here, I'm sure. But it's a very, very interesting place, a very deep place. The people, the educated class and the kids are, you know, of course there's like two classes of non-educated, but the educated kids are so light years ahead of any kids here. I mean, I was hanging out with 22-year-olds all the time, and they just thought I was so cute because I believed my government was honest. And they would laugh, you know. They were laughing hysterically when I was crying because I celebrated the first Christmas that they ever had, because they had never celebrated Christmas before. And I started crying. We were in a hotel and they were all laughing hysterically. Everything is upside down, you know. Now what you didn't know, I don't know if you knew this. I don't think I ever told you this. After we did those shows,
Yeah.
My brother, who, let him rest in peace, my dear brother, was the head, the captain of the New York City Narcotics Squad, which was a big deal in New York City. So he was very high up, and he was on his way to being detective.
Mm.
And my brother called me up after the shows, about a week or two after, I don't remember exactly when, maybe longer. And he said, guess who came to see me today? And I thought, you know, my brother never talks to me like that. Like I said, who? And he said, the FBI and the CIA. And I said, what did they come to see you for? He said, because of you. I said, because of me? I said, what did I do? And he said, you know, you just can't do radio shows to the Soviet Union. you just can't do that. They also went to everybody on the Communications Coordination Committee at the UN that we were both members of, and questioned those people.
Really?
And yes, and my brother said, you should be happy to know that you now have an FBI file. So I said, thank you very much.
Well, that's strange.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we did was on the up and up.
Yeah, it was up and up, but you know, I mean, they don't think up and up, you know. I don't know if they think. I had a lawyer to take us through, which is a whole other story we can talk about some other time, when the Obama administration confiscated all my money. I found a lawyer who somebody should do a sitcom about. You know, she was very overweight, but always rode a bicycle. She planted gardens. All the judges loved her because she was like kind of this crazy radical humanitarian. And she decided to take our case on for free. She felt so sorry for what happened to us. But her son is a computer genius who works from his company within the Pentagon. And he told his mother, Mom, you wouldn't believe how stupid they are. Really stupid. So we have this idea that they really like are on top of things, but if you look at the mess that we're in and the stuff that they're doing and have done, it's not coming from great geniuses. So that's what I have to say about that.
Right. But, well,
yeah.
getting back to what we were talking about, which is that the last time that you and I really were working together was 30 years ago in 1987, when we did the Incident of Cooperation, which was the first live broadcast between the Soviet Union and Russia and the US. And as a result of that, we didn't do anything. That radio show was nominated for an award on the floor of the General Assembly of the UN, and you and I were invited to meet Gorbachev in Russia, and as part of Glasnost, which was their kind of de-Sovietization and de-hierarchization. And you were in Russia, so you know much more about that now. So that brings us here. So we had Gorbachev, Glasnost, and you and I somehow created that. And now 30 years later, here we have Trump and Putin.
Yes, and you know what? Also, we did the Moscow, New York Live series.
Right. We were doing right after that, and birthed by that was a series of programs called Moscow, New York Live. And so out of that nexus, which was really the first public communication nexus between the United States and Russia, since the Russian Revolution and the rise of the Bolsheviks, 30 years later in 2017, I just like kind of the cycle. Here comes Putin, Trump, and you and I were talking on the phone, and I said, "My Lord, Mary, I would like to invite you because you are an amazing astrologer. You have lived in Russia. You have been observing Trump very closely from a multidimensional point of view. You even have some personal anecdotes about him through family happenstance that has occurred over the years. If you could come on with all of this expertise and really make the broadest kind of analysis of where we stand in the world, in the US, going back to the American Revolution, because I think there's a cycle even there, and bring us kind of up to date where we are cosmically. I know that's a tall order.
No, I know, and I took lots of notes, so excuse me if sometime I look like just looking down at the notes. And I want to say, that the work that we did together was really an incredible synastry. It wouldn't have happened without Alfred, and wouldn't have happened without me. Because it was just meant to be.
Yeah.
We both had lost our minds enough to be taken over and to create, what was an amazing, really turned out to be an amazing phenomena. There was another show I did later called After the Summit, which I actually got an award for in the Hall of Lenin.
Wow.
With everybody there who was anybody. and then worked on this one of the first global TV shows called, what was it called? I don't even remember. Rollin Smith hosted the show. And it was really funny because this just goes to show you, what, like having expertise and just doing things like from the heart and trusting that the consciousness of the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, love, just allow it to use you. They had a producer, a Hollywood producer who had produced the series The Fugitive, and very wealthy guy, very successful in Hollywood. They had Rollin Smith, who, was very famous TV host. They had all this very high class, very expensive, techies, and they were doing this TV broadcast from Moscow on the environment. And I was walking out of the summit, this environmental summit that happened in Russia, and I was talking, and this guy behind me said, "Oh, are you part of the radio part of the global environmental TV show?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, how would you like it to go around the world through Moscow World Service, which was the largest radio network in the world at the time? Shortwave, but nevertheless." So I said, sure. So I did my part of that radio broadcast, simulcast, at Moscow World Service, their studios, and then did many of the shows out of there. But what was funny is at the last minute, they didn't give the most current script to either Rollin Smith or myself. And I was somewhere other than he. So he didn't know what Gorbachev was saying on the whole TV show, global TV show. And he didn't, none of the videos they had were the video he had the script for, which were environmental videos from positive things that happened all around the world. And when I got it, I just started laughing, and I told everybody globally, and I just winged the whole thing. The 2 hour show, I winged. I had no script. I knew I had already seen all the videos, so I explained to people what they look like. When I came back after to meet the TV people, and I was at WOR TV, where Rollin was news host. I was his producer. Rollin's whole back was filled with sweat through his coat, jacket. And I said, "How are you?" I was so high, because I just let spirit take me over, And he said, "Oh, it was a disaster. I probably ruined my career." And they were all depressed. And I was totally joyous. Here I am with no, just with like a tenth, maybe, I think they had $1 million or $2 million budget. I had $18,000 to put this thing together, which is more than we ever had.
Right.
And they just flopped the whole thing, and they just made a big mess of it. So there you go. You leave yourself open, you connect with spirit, and that's what's behind it all, exactly. Which is why I want to start with the book of Genesis, because in the first chapter of Genesis, God said he created the world and it was very good. That's the first chapter. That's what he said. Or consciousness said it, or it's a reflection of consciousness, or it's a story, or it's a myth, whatever. In the second chapter, now we have the tree of knowledge, the tree of good and evil. This is where Adam and Eve step in. And he tells them, don't eat from that tree. And of course, we know the story. They eat from the tree. And then they get thrown out of paradise. So the table that I want to set, and I want to really, even though sometimes I may not come from that place when I'm speaking, because I'm not Buddha yet, but that's my intention. that if we stay in the field of good and evil, then there's always going to be good and evil. And there's always going to be an illusion. And we're living in a dream. We all know that. Every major religion says that. It's Maya. This is a dream we're dreaming. So who's dreaming this dream? I'm dreaming it. You're dreaming your part of it. And the collective consciousness, each one of us individually are dreaming their part of it. And if we believe any of it, either good of it or evil of it, then we are affecting the entire consciousness, not only of the world, but the universe, and we're creating chaos. So Rumi said, and if you believe in your life is really good, all of a sudden you think, oh great, my life's good, I'm so happy. Sure enough, the karmic wheel is going to spin around and it's going to go to the other side. And then it's going to seem really, really bad. And you say, oh my God, my life is hell. And so this is our time. The spiritual pioneers, the spiritual warriors, to go beyond good and evil. As Rumi said, beyond good and evil, there's a field, I'll meet you there. And that's the God field. That's the eternally good, blessed, joyous, peaceful field. And we individually are the Lord of our particular universe. So if I keep seeing you like God, then God is who you will be. You are anyway, but I have to stop seeing any of the delusion in the world. And it's very hard because I love news. And I love, I'm Irish and grew up on the Lower East Side, so I like a good fight. And there's nothing better than hating anybody to get your adrenaline going. But if we really want to change this world, it's up to each one of us to start looking at things differently. And astrology is a really good map to do that. But unfortunately, we all can't be great astrologers. And even the great astrologers, 99.9% of all the astrologers around the world said that Clinton was going to be elected. Very few said astrologically that Trump was going to be elected. And I was very affected by that because the day of the inauguration, Scorpio is prevalent, and Hillary has a million planets in Scorpio. I'm sure she tortured the heck out of Clinton after his little debacle with Monica Lewinsky. I know she did. There's no question that she gave him the heart attack that he had. Wasn't the hamburgers, it was Hillary. But because you just don't betray a multi-planeted Scorpio woman that you're married to. It's impossible. It's just their nature. It's not blame. It doesn't make her bad. It's just their nature. And so we're going to talk about the play that is going on now with the characters on the stage. And we're going to go back a little bit in history and show that no matter what happened, we've always been progressing. One debacle led to the next enlightenment, and that will continue. And it's up to us to get ourselves in God consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. Your friend the other day, when you sent me that video and I listened to him, he was very interesting because in the end, that's what he recommended.
You mean Peter Kling?
Yes, Peter Kling, to go into alpha level or theta level, to go into high states of consciousness in order to get through it. But meanwhile, he, like all of us, I do it too, not so much anymore, because I realized that what happened to us politically was because I was so freaked out when I saw what the government was doing, when I revealed who became president and what was about to happen. And I created this debacle in my life. And so it's really important for all of us, as alluring as the dream is on the dark side, to, even if we're looking at it or watching it, is to keep saying, this is a dream I'm dreaming. There's no good or evil. There's only God there. No matter what this looks like, behind, like the Wizard of Oz, behind the screen, God is there. Or consciousness, if that word offends you. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, so God is a familiar word to me, but you can call it consciousness, you can call it love. Only love is there. You can call it, whatever you want to call it. As my 101 Christian Science mentor said, God schmog, what difference does it make? It's there, and we have to reach that field. And, however we reach it, through meditation, through prayer, through, Rajneesh said, dance until you drop, sing till you can't sing anymore. Unfortunately, some of us wind up on our deathbed. However we get through it, that's what's important to hold, because the next several years are going to be a challenge. And challenges always make us stronger. And people may fall away. And, there's no people there anyway. So it's just a dream we're dreaming. It's God and Shiva and Shakti dancing, dancing their dream, dancing their energy. So let's remember that. And, I'll try to remember it, because I once said to my Christian Science friend and mentor, oh, what a genius. I wish you could have met her, Alfred. I wish you could have met her. It was like going into her office was like visiting Jesus Christ. That's what it felt like. You could go in depressed and ready to put a gun to your head, and you would come out like walking, your wings on your feet, so in love, everything changed. Just going to visit her, you could polish her nails. But I once said to her, I hate Obama. And she said to me, really? You hate him? Those good old questions, The Jews were good with their questions. You really hate him? And so I stopped for a minute. I said, well, no, I don't really know him, so how could I hate him? I just don't like what he's doing. And that was the beginning of me starting to, look at my likes and dislikes and hates and loves. And it's gotten deeper since then. And it's still a challenge, because I think it's a challenge as long as you're on this planet and you see things going on in front of you. But that being said, do you have anything to say? Let's go to the revolution, American Revolution.
No, right. I'm just following your narrative, and I know that we're at a very special place now in the American astrological chart, and maybe you could explain that.
Okay, well, the Pluto was in Capricorn during the American Revolution. And Pluto is now in Capricorn again. Now, Capricorn is the sign ruled by Saturn. It's the sign of old institutions. Pluto is a great disruptor. It's the dark god. It's the god of the underworld. It's not really a bad god. It's just another god. There's the sun god, which is Jupiter, and Pluto, which is the dark god. And it disrupts things. But Pluto is wonderful in a way. It disrupts things, but it's like the phoenix that rises out of the ashes. It always, in the end, gives you more than it took away, if you can live through it. Now, Saturn, on the other hand, it's just cold. It's devastating. It rocks your world. It takes things away. Your life may get better, but you'll never get over what it's done to you. And each time you go through your Saturn return, it's the same thing. And Saturn, Saturn, you just made me realize this. See, now I'm picking up information. Is in some charts, the U.S. moon is in Aquarius. When in Indian astrology, when Saturn squares the moon, which is when, oh boy, I'm getting a whole bunch of information. When Saturn squared my moon, all our money was taken away. Our bank account was frozen. We had no money to eat. It was devastating. That was the same time that the banking crisis happened. My moon is in Aquarius. Richard's moon is in Aquarius. My daughter Danielle's moon is in Aquarius. And the United States moon is in Aquarius. So Saturn was squaring the United States moon. And it's just kind of gone out of Saturn. And in Indian astrology, this is when I first became aware of it. I was studying Indian astrology, and this teacher wanted us to read this book called The Greatness of Saturn. And I advise anybody who's into astrology to read it. It's a very hard book to read because it's an Indian myth. And the old Indian names are very hard to pronounce. But in the beginning, this great Sanskrit scholar, American, Svoboda, his guru told him to translate this myth while he was going through his Saturn square the moon. And he says, if you read this myth very carefully, very intentionally, with a lot of focus, it will change your life. So I began reading it, Richard began reading it, Danny began reading it. All three of us got halfway through and we put it down. I, however, a couple of months later picked it up. They never did. I finished the book, and at the end, there are prayers to Saturn, and the myth is basically about that this king who has everything, it's kind of like the book of Job, this king who has everything invites all the astrologers in for each planet to find out which is the greatest planet of them all, but he doesn't invite Saturn. And so at the end of this, Saturn comes to him and says, how come you didn't invite me? And he says, well, you never bring any good into anybody's life. You always bring bad. So how could you be the greatest planet of the world? So Saturn says, well, I'll show you. He destroys his kingdom. He kills his family. I mean, the poor king is rolling around the countryside with just his head. He's been decapitated. I mean, it's like the book of Job. And at the end, which is a 7-year period, it's 2 years before Saturn squares your moon, 2 years of the square, and 2 years after. But it all about, and it equals 7 years. And Saturn says, well, you've gotten through it now, you get one wish. And he says, I wish this never happens to anyone again. And Saturn says, everybody has to go through it. Everybody goes through it. Even Shiva went through it. And he tells how Saturn was squaring Shiva's moon, and Shiva said, well, I'll just go under the Ganges River and meditate for 7 years. And he comes out and he says to Saturn after 7 years, well, nothing happened to me. And Saturn says, what are you talking about? You had to go under the Ganges River for 7 years and meditate. And Shiva goes, okay, you are the greatest planet of them all. So Saturn, without me realizing it, it's not part of my notes, was squaring the moon of the United States. That's why we've been going through what we've been going through, whether people think we were going through anything or not. There's been this big economic financial bank crisis. So it's not just the Pluto and Capricorn that we went through, which knocks down old institutions. The Patriots were getting rid of the old institutions of Great Britain that were colonizing America. And now we're going through it again. We're going through our second American Revolution. Pluto has made a complete circle around the chart of the United States. And what's most likely going to happen at the end of it, because it's not going to end until 220, and then, there'll be fallout, as there always is. is that we are going to go back to the roots of our founding fathers, of what this country was actually based on. The truth, the Constitution, not this, we have a living Constitution and we can change it any way we want, No, we're going to go back to exactly, see, the founding fathers revolted against Great Britain for the same reason we, and Trump as our George Washington, as I believe, is revolting against the globalists. The East Indian Company had taken over the parliament in Great Britain at the time. It was the first kind of globalist company, and they were blackmailing the king, which were then they started taxing us and all their crazy, taxing the tea. And so that's when the founding fathers revolted. They didn't want to go to war, but they were revolting against globalism and the control of Great Britain. And now we're back at the same spot. We are revolting against globalists. And don't forget, there were colonists in America who never fought in the Revolution. They wanted to stay with Great Britain. They didn't want to fight with Washington. They even helped the British. We even had Indians who helped the British. And, they're the first Americans. So we have to realize that there are going to be people in this country who don't get it. They don't get it that we are revolting against globalism and the elite globalists taking over our lives and basically making us more slaves than we are already. That's what they're up to. They don't know about you. They don't care about you. I mean, just the fact that Hillary called working men and women who built this country deplorables, unredeemable deplorables, should let us all know where globalists are coming from. And she and Bill want nothing more in their entire life to be up there with the big boys and girls. Now, her best friend is Lynn de Rothschild. Lady Lynn de Rothschild is a woman from New Jersey whose father built Teterboro Airport. She went to Columbia. She's very brilliant. She built a multi-million-dollar company. And Kissinger introduced her to the Rothschild. I forget his first name, begins with an E. I actually like him. But she's part of the Rothschild dynasty now, and she's Hillary Clinton's best friend. They were at Chelsea's wedding. It was the Rothschilds who paid off the Clintons to use the Lincoln bedroom for their wedding night. Could you imagine that? How disgusting, really, that the Rothschilds would use the Lincoln bedroom on their wedding night. I mean, and the Clintons sold them the bedroom. They rented it to them, the White House. So that's where they are at. And to get to that place, you got to have big bucks, really big bucks. I mean, look, Trump has $10 billion and he's not part of them. So you have to have really big bucks, and not only big bucks, you have to be willing to carry out their agenda, which is what the Clintons were willing to do. Maybe they didn't start out that way, but that's how they ended up. I mean, she stole George Washington's dinnerware from the White House. She stole White House historical antique furniture. She got caught. She had to pay a $50,000 fine and return it. But this is who the rest of the country, the people who didn't vote for Trump, voted for her. They didn't know these things. They didn't see them the same as half of the colonists didn't see what the British were doing to them in America. And so now we're going to have a second American Revolution. Will it turn into be a battle? Not if we are the lords of our universe and keep our heads straight and see what is, whatever happening is. It's not good or evil. It is happening, and do our best to get out of the fight-flight mode. We got to get out of fear, and it's not easy. Believe me, I've just struggled through a bunch of years of it. But I tell you, if you can elevate your consciousness out of the game, out of the dream we're collectively dreaming, and we all pick up on these dreams and these fears. You know, we're radio receivers, and if we stay in that, we're going to create a nightmare for ourselves. For a while, I worked with a MIT engineer who was a student of Joel Goldsmith, a real magician. And he said when he first got onto the idea that nothing but God exists and everything was God, he used to put little sticky papers all over his house. The lamp is God, the computer is God, the phone is God, the person calling on the phone is God, the cup is God, the coffee maker is God, the desk is God. Just to keep reminding him to stay in the presence, whatever you want to call that presence. And the funny part of the story is he met a woman in a bar and he brought her home and he said, I thought we were going to have a great night of lovemaking. And she saw all the sticky papers and she said, oh my God, you're a Jesus freak, and screamed and ran out of the house. So, but that's the idea, to stay in the presence, to stay in the presence. And the hard part is not to negate the bad illusion. The hard part is to negate also the good illusion. There's no good, there's no bad. Don't eat from the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge. And you know, knowledge is wonderful. It's so enticing. Those big red apples, they're so delicious. And they're endless. They're endless. They never stop. And as long as we're on this planet, we'll probably be involved in them. But we're going through our second American Revolution, and hopefully we won't be shooting each other. And I cancel that, even mentioning that, and that it will be more spiritual and elevated, so that we all get it. That and remember, there's always a progression. We're always a progression. No matter how the dream looks like a nightmare. You know, it was just about 100 years ago that women got the right to vote. 50 or 60 years ago that blacks got the right to vote. And so we are moving forward, however slowly it seems. Healing occurs slowly. There's no blame, and there's nobody to blame. Everybody's just actors on the stage, and they're all doing their part. And speaking of actors, you know, Obama has Neptune on his midheaven in Scorpio. I always felt, you know, the Scorpio energy about him. And I was told he had Scorpio rising, and it seemed fit, but he doesn't have Scorpio rising. He's actually at the end of Aquarius, the beginning of Pisces. But he has Scorpio on the midheaven, which probably Neptune is the ruler of his chart, because nobody has ever validated his chart. And my belief is he most likely was born in Kenya. I don't, you know, there's a real birth certificate online. You can look it up. I don't want to get into that whole thing, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change his midheaven. He should have been an actor. He loves actors. You know, they were just at his last party at the White House, not us regular poor people. And he loves Hollywood, and maybe that's what he'll become. He'll become an actor. Psychologically, he had a horrible family life. His father didn't care about him. His mother sent him back to her mother when he was 10. He's ruled by Neptune, which Neptune is also a god. He was one of the three brothers. There's Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto. And so he's very, very powerful, but he's very watery. He goes under, he's hidden, you can't actually see what's there. Neptunian people like that also They're liars. They have a tendency not to tell the truth. Maybe, I don't know if it's because they're delusional or they just like to lie, especially in Scorpio. They have a tendency to hang out with shady characters, crooked characters, and their most important attribute with Neptune and Scorpio on the midheaven is that they get their ascendancy in their career through crooked means, not honest means, through crooked means. So, but the most interesting thing, which I don't know how many astrologers talk about this, which was something I realized, Sagittarius is a sign of God. That's where the eye of God is in the universe. Apparently, that's where the universe came forth from, or at least our galaxy. And Pluto going into Sagittarius, which it did in 2001, is the dark god is now in control. And the dark god was going over the ascendant of the United States. It just started. Now, when a planet just goes into a new house, that's when it's the strongest, right over the new house cusp, or when it's going out of the new house cusp. Everything in between is, playing out what happened when it first went over the cusp, and at the end, what's coming up. So Pluto, I think the universe is so funny, whether it's just this huge consciousness, whether there's this great white man in the sky or black man or multicolored man, it's really a prankster, a jokester. Osama bin Laden knocked down, if he did, or whoever did, knocked down the World Trade Center just as Pluto went over the first house cusp of the United States. So the first house cusp is the health of the United States, the head intellect of the United States, the mind of the United States. So Pluto, the god Pluto, took control. And it doesn't matter whether, it was, a black ops operation, it doesn't matter. What matters is that Pluto went there and it didn't cause it, it reflects it. That's what was going on. Now, it went all through that time, the next period of time. And then the day Obama was elected was the last day Pluto was in Sagittarius. So we got Osama at the beginning and Obama at the end. I always wondered, how on earth can we vote for somebody named Obama when Osama is supposedly just attacked the United States? Now, we don't know if he did, right? Because there's all this speculation about who it was. And everybody has a different story. And I do believe that they were knocked down with dynamite first. And maybe there weren't even any planes. Maybe they were a hologram. I mean, sometimes I think Obama is a hologram. But nevertheless, even if it was, the Carlyle group had something to do with it, and it was a Black Ops, Israeli, CIA operation to put us all into fear, which of course they did, it was nevertheless, Osama was used. It could even be them playing it out. Osama did this, and now we're putting Obama in office. I mean, they like to make fun of us. They like to do that, the elites, because they think we're, pond scum. They have no use for us. They live in a different world. And it's so, even when I've worked for wealthy people, and I'm sure you've seen it too, Alfred, when when I was working for Rollins Smith, And Rollins said, how do you manage to do all this global thing and travel all around the world and you have no money? And I said, well, Rollin, give up your house in Colorado, give up your multi-million house in New Jersey, give up your multi-million-dollar job and just free fall and watch what happens. Because that's what we did, Alfred. That's how we created those shows. We were free falling. And, for whatever reason, the universe, the consciousness chose us as good receivers to put together what it had next in mind, which was to create that light grid, that grid of light there. And so Obama's not really the bad guy. He's just playing his role. And don't you think the universe is funny? Pluto is the dark god. And Obama just happens to be dark skinned. I just think it's really funny. It's all, the universe does that. If you pay attention, it does that all the time. So now Pluto went into Capricorn, and that, just as the patriots and founding fathers were revolting against the old rule of Europe, of the British Empire, Pluto in Capricorn now is going to break down all of these old institutions that either came back, that survived, or that were built up. I mean, and it's, this is a worldwide phenomena. I mean, Deutsche Bank needs to be bailed out. And Germany, Merkel says, we have no money to bail you out. If Deutsche Bank goes down, and they are going to go down, the whole banking system is going to be rocked. Now, Trump spoke about this way before he wanted to become president and declared to be president. It was like he waited for the exact moment that he could. He knew he couldn't run as a Democrat because he's really kind of a New York Democrat. He's kind of like me. He's a conservative, liberal Democrat. That's what I was. I don't know what I am anymore. I'm not. I don't exist. The reason that I vibed so much with him is we were both born in the same year. We're both fire dogs in Chinese astrology. And his chart in a lot of ways mirrors mine. He's a Gemini. I have Gemini rising. He's got Leo rising. I have multiple planets in Aquarius. I mean, if I looked as good as his wife, I probably could be his wife. He'd probably marry me. But I'd love to get a job with him. That's another story. Anyway, he's a sun god. That's who he is. He's a sun god. His ruling planet is the sun. His ascendant is Leo. The sign that's on your ascendant is the sign that rules your chart and is the main. So the sun is his main sign. So he's Jupiter, and he's just like Jupiter. Too many women, all the gold, all the affairs. He's Jupiter, but he is the beneficent god. He's the beneficent god, and of course he's very concerned about the economy. And who is ever the bigger archetype than him, like the big honcho boss, God. Oh, God, some more information came in. The Rothschilds are ruled by Saturn, by the way. That's what they picked for their, the Star of David is the Star of Saturn. Because there never was a Star of David at the time of David in Israel or Abraham. It was a invented thing that came later, and the Rothschilds picked the Star of Saturn. And they're not Jews either, they're Khazars, and they're this group of very violent Turkish people they came from, very violent, very warlike, very mean, horrible people. So they took on being Jews because they had a choice between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and they picked being Jewish, but they weren't Jews, and they're not Jews. And and as far as I know, maybe Netanyahu is a Khazar also, and not an Ashkenazi Jew. But there are very few Ashkenazi Jews there. A lot of them were killed in the Holocaust. But so Trump comes on the scene. He's a fire dog. So let me tell you about fire dogs and dogs, right? You know, dogs. Dogs are loyal. You feed a dog. You're nice to a dog. It's your friend. It will protect you. It will save you. All it wants to do is be loved by you. That's all it wants. They're loyal. They're honest. They are what they are. Now, he's a fire dog. So he's like me. He's very fiery. I'm very fiery. And, you know, when I was in Russia, people are very astute. You know, one of my interpreters said to me, you know, you're a very interesting person. People either love you or they hate you. And that's what it is with him. You either love him, you get him, or you hate him. That's why there's so much fear and hatred around him. But he's really just a dog. You know, when I was going through a really bad, really horrible time, God, it was just such a horrible time. And I was collecting puppies. You know, my dog, you know, I have always had a dog, Alfred. So I had 2 dogs. I had 3 dogs, and 2 of them mated. I had 10 puppies. I wound up having 6 huge dogs in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in New York City. Can you imagine that apartment with 6 Rottweiler Labradors? Dogs, huge 100-pound dogs. I had 6 of them. My living room looked like a dog carpet. Anyway, they were the only things that made me happy when my daughter was very ill. And the only thing that made me happy were puppies. So I kept having puppies, much to my husband's despair, you know, because he fed them and he walked them. But he knew that I was in really bad shape. And I was walking down 97th Street, going back home from the hospital. And this poem came to me. And it's a short little poem. And it goes like this. Like shooting stars they are, from birth to death, teaching unconditional love, little furry sparks of God spelled backwards. And so that's who dogs are. And there's a famous Sufi story where a guy talks to God and God talks to him all the time. And he says, God, would you do me a favor? None of my friends believe that you talk to me. Would you come and visit us? I'll make a big lunch and you come. And God says, sure, no problem. So he has all his friends over there at lunchtime. The whole table is filled with this wonderful food. And exactly at noon, the door bursts open and this dog runs in, jumps on the table, eats all the food, messes everybody's clothes up, and all the people run out and they hate the host. And he goes and he gets on his knees and he prays and he says, God, you said you were coming. Why didn't you come? And God says to him, I did come. I was the one running on the table. You all beat me off with sticks. So I left. So dogs have a very special place in mythology. Many of the gods had dogs. Diana, you know, traveled with dogs. 6 dogs, by the way, just like me. I used to have these 6 big dogs, and she's one of my archetypes, the warrior goddess. And Trump is a fire dog. So he's very fiery, which we can see. He was very fiery. Now, when I first watched him, I didn't know whether he was going to be president. All I knew was that I liked him. I thought he was hysterically funny. I couldn't believe that he was talking to these 17 politicians the way he was talking to them. I couldn't believe he called Jeb Bush low energy. I couldn't believe, you know, what he said about Rubio. I couldn't believe him, what he said about Carly and her face. He just made me, I said, this guy has hormones, let's just call them that, as big as the universe or bigger. I mean, I was sure, you know, somebody was going to off him during the primary. The Bushes voted for Clinton. So, you know, you can see where that is at. And I thought maybe she would win. But then I started seeing the movement of the people the 95 million people who have no jobs in this country. 95 million. Obama lies about this. He says he put in more jobs. No, he didn't put in more jobs. What happened is because of his Obamacare, people don't allow people, small businesses don't allow people to work full time. They only allow them to work part time, so they don't have to give them to pay for Obamacare. So now he said he created more jobs because instead of one full-time person, you have two part-time people. He didn't create more jobs. Half the country, 49% of the country is on food stamps. So he's done his Neptunian job, which has been one big lie. And all of us, not just in the United States, but all of us all over the world are going to go through a big wake-up call because people who voted for him, for Obama, put their hopes in a person. You cannot put your hopes in a person. I am the Lord thy God. I am, you are. I am, you are the Lord of your universe. Cannot have strange gods before you and put your hope in some other person, some Messiah. And they were calling him the Messiah. And people still think he was a Messiah. What I liked about Trump, even though he has a humongous ego, he has a Leo rising, he also makes fun of himself. He also, as much as he said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, as many times as he said that, and I listened to every speech carefully, he said, we are going to make America great again. We, because it must be we. And people need to get involved in however they're going to get involved, you know, whether it's to create communities. I mean, I would strongly advise to slowly or quickly start storing 3 weeks to 3 months of food. However, I really would, you know, if nothing happens, you have it. But what looks like it's going to happen to this economy is not funny because, you know, right after the American Revolution, the United States also went into a very bad depression. Right after. So, you know, because they couldn't depend on Great Britain anymore, where they were also getting money from. And the country was split, people were divided. So it took us a long way to climb back up. Now, Trump, he's ruled by the sun. He's got the sun on the midheaven, which also he has Uranus on the midheaven, which makes you see his destiny number, his path of destiny numerologically is that his life is a constant renewal and change of challenge and growth. So he's growing. This is big new stuff for him. And he's in his wisdom years now. After 70, you go into your wisdom years. And he's in his wisdom time. So he has accomplished everything that his life lesson set out for him to accomplish. He's a 40 in his birth number, life lesson. 40s are builders. They are also very honest, horribly honest. They're the square. You know, sometimes you wish they weren't so honest, like he is. Like I had a laugh the other day when he said about Meryl Streep. And, you know, everybody's brainwashed and they see Meryl Streep won all these awards and Academy Awards and she's getting a Life Achievement Award. Well, the fact is, you know, if you really talk to really great actors, which I have in New York, they think Meryl Streep is crap. You know, they don't think she can act. You know, somehow, you know, who becomes famous in this world is not always who is the real genius. It doesn't always happen that way. You know, people who are, look at Tesla. Look what happened to him. He was a great genius. Look what happened to him. So great geniuses are not always on the forefront. Great actors are not always on the forefront. She, as I heard somebody say last night, I thought it was so funny. She's no Glenn Close. Now, Glenn Close is a great actor. And for Meryl Streep to get up there and say what she said, and everybody's saying she had courage, she's up there. She's there to be actors. Actors are the most vain, egotistical people in the world. They're not really creative people, unless they're writers too. The only creative person in a film is the script writer. The director takes the writer's script and he directs actors who are puppets what to do. So they don't really do anything, get paid a lot of money. They're puppets. That's why they're all ruled by Neptune. Film is ruled by Neptune. Obama is ruled by Neptune. I'm telling you, he'd do really great in Hollywood. You know, he could be, you know, the liberal Denzel Washington. Denzel is conservative, thank God. He didn't look happy when Meryl Streep was going through her rant. Anyway, that's her. So getting back to Trump. So he is trustworthy. He is a 40. 40 are builders, they're architects, they're draftsmen, but he's more, those are fours, that's the square, 4. They're dependable, they need a structure, they need a family, they need order, they're great businessmen, they're very great in business, but he also is more than a 4, he's a 40, and 0 is the God number. And I know this number very well because it's my husband's number. My husband is a 40. They are builders directed by God. They are God's builders on earth. And, you know, my husband has always built, he was also a environmentally home builder. He built environmental homes. Very successful at it. Very successful person in business. Very smart in business. Can you control them? No. You have Sagittarius rising. Trump has Uranus right close to his sun. You cannot control people like this. There is not one person out there. I don't care if they put a gun to his head or his family's head. If they did, he would give in temporarily, but I'm telling you, those people better watch out in a short moment. This is a totally individualized human being. Nobody can stop him. And you know, he's very interesting because whether it's his daughter, which he adores, and has a very big influence in his life, and don't forget, she's in a very traditional religion. She became an Orthodox Jew. She keeps a kosher home. She leads a very structured life and home, and so does his family, so does his wife, who doesn't want to come to be in the White House. She wants her son to finish school. These are all this is Trump's universe. It's very safely structured so he can operate from there. This is how 40s need to operate. Like, it wasn't until me and my husband got together, and he was married before, that his life really took off. Because, you know, I have strong Cancer in my chart. I provide a home. That's what I do. I provide a base. I'm very home-based. A little wacky. I'm an Aquarian, but I provide a home base. So it's a wacky home base, you know, filled with dogs and animals and birds and crazy things, but it's still a home base. And once 40s have a structure like that, they fly. And so Trump accomplished his life goal. He made money. He made billions. Getting $1 million loan from his father and turning it into $10 billion in New York City, no matter, you know, they say he went bankrupt. Well, he didn't go bankrupt. He had reorganizations. It's under the bankruptcy law, but it's not technically a bankruptcy. So he reorganized the companies. Some people probably lost money. I don't know any multimillionaire or billionaire who hasn't, or any successful person who hasn't had moments of failures. So making $10 billion in real estate in New York is like the most phenomenal. It's like a miracle. His life was meant to do that. He was meant to do that. He went through he did what needed to be done. He got around the mafia. He worked with the mafia. He worked with the Democrats. He gave the Democrats money. He gave Republicans money. Had to give Democrats, all these crazy conservatives who wouldn't vote for him because he said he gave Democrat money. You try having a business, a big business in New York in real estate, and not giving the Democrats money, forget it. He would have been a total failure. So yes, he gave the Democrats money. He gave everybody money because he had money to give. Now, another thing about the racism, he was given the Rosa Parks Award with Muhammad Ali, and Rosa Parks was there with him. He has photographs of her. Because he gave so much money and built and helped to build and rebuild ghettos and gave money to poor black schools. And so this idea,
you're
okay, I did that. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
The idea that he's a racist, to live in New York City and be a racist and be as outspoken as him, he would have been murdered a long time ago. The black people loved him. He gave money to Al Sharpton. He gave money to Jesse Jackson. They're so phony now that they go and, you notice they're not too far out there criticizing Trump because he gave them lots of bucks. And that it's just totally ridiculous that he's a racist. So he's a 40. He's God's builder on earth. He's accomplished his money. He met the woman who meets his ideal that he needed. Now, you can imagine what it was like for him. I mean, if you saw his first wife, I mean, she was a good motherly type. She raised his children. But, after a while, this is a guy who's becoming a multimillionaire and then a billionaire in New York. He's got and he's very good. He was very good looking. Every woman in the world throwing themselves at his feet. So he went through his philandering time. And at first he got caught. He met Marla Maples and he married her. But then he realized, okay, no. And he got out of that. And then from that point on, he just fooled around for years and years and years. No women, until he met this one, his wife, Melania. And she's a very good person to stay at home. I don't know if she's a big intellectual genius. I mean, she speaks 5 languages. That takes a certain amount of skill. But she's definitely into being a mother, and she's going to be the most exquisite first lady. But he's 40. Now, the interesting thing about his soul number, and what your soul number means is this is what you must accomplish this lifetime, even if you don't accomplish your other things, even if he didn't make his billions of dollars, even if he didn't find the perfect woman for him, any of these things, he must had to accomplish this and having to accomplish it. And a 7 is a number of completeness. It's also a very spiritual number. It's also the philosopher. My husband also has a 7 soul number, so I've studied this number very much. They like to be alone. They don't, which is great that his wife doesn't care. She's going to be in New York and he's going to care in Washington, D.C., because you can't control this man. It's just like, Sag, you can't control them. My husband has 4 planets in Sag. You can't control them. It's crazy. It's like controlling a wild stallion. You can't. So you just have to go have fun with them. Like I'm a dog and you go have fun, with the wild stallion. So his soul number is very philosophical. Now, Trump used to go for years, his church was the Marble Collegiate Church, which was the reverend there and pastor was wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. His name just skips my mind right now.
Is that Norman Vincent Peale?
Yes, Norman Vincent Peale. That's right. I forgot his name. Norman Vincent Peale. He was his guide, his lecturer, his pastor. He went to him when he was in trouble. When he left Ivana and he went into his bankruptcy and everything was crashing in New York and he was living in Trump Tower in a little studio apartment. It was Reverend Vincent Peale who helped lift him up. And you can watch Trump, and I love this about him, no matter what was thrown at him, and everything was thrown at him, molesting children, raping women, uh, everything. Everything was that he lied about the people jumping up and down on the New Jersey roofs. Well, I saw the people jumping down on the New Jersey roofs, and so did Richard. It was on TV, and when the 9/11 came down, the Muslims were jumping up and down on the roofs there, and the media lied about that. They lied about it. There was a video, and it came out later, and that journalist who worked for the Washington Post, who was supposedly retarded, and he is retarded. He has a deformity. Who they said Trump was making fun of him. He was the one who showed that video and wrote an article about it, and then denied it and said he didn't remember it. Now, Trump wasn't making fun of his deformity. If you watch Trump in other speeches he gave, he moves his hands like that. But what the media did was edit it to look like he was making fun of that guy. He wasn't making fun of him. He would never do something like that. It's not in his nature. It's not in the nature of somebody like him. It's just not in their nature. And now, one of the things that's happened to him, you have to understand all of the black pastors that have come to see Trump. They have prayed around him. They have laid hands on him. They are praying for them. The greatest black pastors of the most prominent black churches in the United States are for Trump. Reverend Manning, who was my pastor, black pastor in New York City, also probably got me in trouble. Reverend Manning held impeachment hearings against Obama because, you know, citizens can impeach a president. Not that anybody pays attention to it, but they can. He held impeachment hearings. I was at those impeachment hearings. There were really reputable people who came to them. They were in his church. The FBI came to those impeachment hearings. Obama sent the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA with machine guns, weapons drawn into Reverend Manning's church, small church in Harlem, and threatened him because they said he threatened Obama's life. And he said, I never threatened his life. He said, I never threatened his life because I want him to live. Because I want him to live because I want to see him impeached and hung in Times Square. That's what he said to the NSA. This is Reverend Manning. He's fearless, very strong in Christ, very strong, very, very, very strong. And he came out for Trump very early. He went to see him. He spoke to him. In fact, he was the one who gave Trump the birth certificate information. Nobody had more information than Reverend Manning on Trump's birth certificate. And also the sheriff in Arizona has real information that Obama was not born in Hawaii. So that's a whole other story, and I don't want to argue with people. You know, they'll think I'm crazy. You can think what you want, but if you be serious about it and research it, he never was who he said he was. You know, whether he was, you know, put into office. Look, we know George Soros, who, you know, was a Nazi sympathizer. He gave him the first money, his very bundled money for him. An Iranian guy who was economic advisor to Saudi Arabia king helped Obama. Obama was in business with him. They then put the guy in jail, and nobody's ever heard from him since. I don't know whether he's alive or not. He was from Chicago. So this is, he was a very underworld figure. He was a dark god. Of course, he's still God. He still had his purpose, and his purpose was to really, what Obama did was awaken half the country who could see what he was doing, destroying the country. He was selling the country out to the globalists. He signed a agreement that can never be revoked, supposedly. I don't know. Trump will do something with it, I'm sure. That Monsanto can never be prosecuted for eternity for whatever land they hurt, whatever people die or get deformed from their chemicals. Obama gave them eternal immunity. So he's a globalist. This is a globalist. And Obama's path of destiny is an 8. An 8 is about money. Obama's about money. Obama's about making money. That's what he's about, and he's fulfilling his destiny. And he, for the globalists, he broke the United States. And Neptune also rules oil. So you see all these wars in the Middle East. Well, I haven't looked at Bush's chart. Bush was a pawn, puppet for the rest of the, bad guys. I think George Bush was basically a nice guy, just a jock, nice guy you meet in a bar. And now what he wants to do is paint. He doesn't say anything. He's quiet. He never criticized Obama. But he's also a globalist because he came out against Trump and he voted for Hillary. So they went in there to get the oil of the Middle East, to just rape the Middle East. And the globalists have an agenda, because these people who don't believe in a good and loving God and that they're God, that's one of the things that happens when you have a lot of money. I know I had a lot of money. You think you're it, which is the biggest fake thing in the world, is that they want to depopulate the planet because they really believe that there are too many people on the planet. Well, it's totally ridiculous. They're not in control of the birthing of people or the dying of people. God can wipe out, or the force, or whatever you want to do it, in one tidal wave, millions of people, one earthquake, hundreds of thousands of people. So we don't need, Prince Charles or Prince Philip or, who are the rest of them, to depopulate the planet, which is what they're doing over there. They're depopulating the planet. They put ISIS into power. By the way, the new Islam, the radical Islam, the Islam of ISIS, is very congruent with Obama's chart. It's a very scorpionic chart. So he's very happy to support them. And this is a big problem, because if you do follow the underground stuff, we know that the United States has funded ISIS. That's just a fact. So now we have all these black pastors who turned against Obama. Of course, the media never said anything about it. Never. There's no real news in the mainstream media. Not on any of them. Even Fox News, people are mad at Fox News. They never said a bad thing about Obama. Glenn Beck was on Fox News talking about Obama, and they fired him. They got rid of him. He was on CNN when CNN was all for Bush, and he was talking against Bush, and they fired him. And then I don't know what happened. Glenn Beck went insane. He's mentally ill, I think. I think he eats too many M&Ms, but he's not the guy he was. He's lost track. So Trump has this spiritual side to him. It's the thing he has to accomplish. And, I could see that he was a student of Norman Vincent Peale. Everything that happens, every bad thing they say about him, he turns it around. He flips it, and it works for him. This is somebody who understands, maybe he only understands the power of positive thinking. Maybe he only understands that. But that is also the power of beyond good and evil. It's also like, and it's also Christian Science, by the way. You see the lamp on fire, and you say that it's not really on fire. It doesn't mean you only don't go and do anything about it. Yes, you throw water on it or whatever you have to do, pull the plug out. You take care of it, but you know all the time that you keep in your mind that only God is, only good is, real good. Not like, adrenaline good, but real, honest, peaceful, centered good. Only good is. And you always keep that in your mind all the time. Only love is, only God is. Now, people got all upset about what he was doing with the nuclear stuff. So he made a comment about this. Of course, the media doesn't report it. So unless you're following him on Facebook all the time and on his website, and hear everything he has to say in his tweets, you will not have known this. He said, look, the world right now is not ready to give up nuclear weapons. He would be more than happy to give them up if the rest of the world would all lay them down. They're not going to lay them down. The other day, Obama just gave Iran, he's trying to really screw up Trump's presidency so bad. And remember, he's a globalist, and it's globalists behind him and all their think tanks that are making him do these things. He's just an actor, puppet. Gave Iran enough uranium to make 10 nuclear bombs. So now Iran has that. That's what he gave them. And so is that going to balance the nuclear powers so that we won't bomb each other? I don't know. I mean, if the mullahs are always saying death to America, death to America, death to America, we're going to kill you, we're going to kill you, and funding, terrorists, it may not be a good thing. Then again, Iran wants to be on the world stage, so they might straighten up. Even Trump will straighten up on the world stage. He will. This is not an impulsive, emotionally erratic man. You cannot accomplish what he's accomplished. Meet people in different governments around the world and be an impulsive man. He will bark like I bark, but I am not impulsive. I'm very careful when it comes down to it. I'm careful about keeping my home. I'm careful about keeping my base together. I'm careful in making sure my family, my friends, my home is taken care of. And that's how he is. And Trump has Venus in Cancer, and the United States is a Cancer. When he said he loves America, he really loves America. And when I watched him so clearly when he was on the campaign trail giving speeches. He loves those people. He loves those working people. These are people he grew up with. He grew up on construction sites. His father brought him on construction sites from the time he was 5 and 6 years old. He had to clean bathrooms. He had to sweep floors. This is a guy who was put to work from the time he was a child by his father, who gave him a work ethic. He's a hard worker, and he has humongous energy. I mean, Pence and everybody said they can't keep up with him. He's like nonstop. He has huge energy. So when we pick a president, we're picking the head of our tribe. The United States is a tribe of Americans. We're picking the head of our tribe. Bertram Brown, who I had the great pleasure to meet, was a psychiatrist through 5 sitting presidents. And he was the one who turned me on to that the president is the chief of our tribe, and that the president's psychiatrist is like the shaman of the tribe. And so he's a chief. Now, you want a chief of a tribe is always a great warrior. Trump is a great warrior. He didn't go to war, which I would have liked. I would like every president to have to go to war. Every president to be involved in war. This way, they wouldn't be so quick to start wars. But he did go to military school. And he has surrounded himself with Mad Dog Mattis, who's a great warrior, a great general. And not only, he's just not a fighter, he's an intellectual, he's a genius. Do you know what he did, Mad Dog Mattis, after Obama threw him out? Greatest general, maybe. He's he's a great general. He went across the country on his own dime and went to the homes of all the Gold Star families and thanked them for their child's service. I mean, that almost brings me to tears, that somebody in America did that, and it was never reported in the mainstream media. Never reported. So he surrounded himself with generals. He's right about Putin. I mean, but before I get to Putin, and this whole lying thing that the Russians gave him the election and that's why Hillary lost. Hillary lost. I mean, think of her as the warrior goddess of America and fainting, having to be carried out and thrown into a van at a tribal meeting, which is what the memorial service was at 9/11, who half the country can't trust. But, even people who didn't trust her and thought she was a liar, they were going to vote for her anyway, because we've been so brainwashed. The universities are so socialized. They can't think. I mean, kids are into communism. They have no idea what communism is. They think it's just one big new world, happy world. We'll all hug one another and kiss one another. This is not what it is. And, Lenin said, socialism is a train stop on the way to communism. So there we are. That's what socialism is. That's what Bernie Sanders wanted. He would have brought the country down faster. We just don't have money for all these things. There's no money. We're almost $20 trillion in debt. Thank you, George Bush and Obama and the globalists. Thank you. And Trump is a businessman. And he was talking about this for years. I mean, he went into Congress and talked about it, about the overregulation of businesses, that they couldn't do business. And it wasn't just the big corporations. It was the small businesses. Mom and pop businesses have so many regulations they can't do their business. There's so many papers to fill out. The corporations left because we have the highest tax rate in the world in the United States for corporations. They can use free labor outside. If you want to put people back to work, if you want to shore up America again, and, you're not going to shore up America if you don't really give them hope. Obama said he was going to bring hope. He didn't bring hope to the country. He brought desperation. People are desperate. 50%, almost 50% of the people are on food stamps. So he didn't bring any hope. And he said the economy can never be fixed. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no way to downsize the government. Give me a break. The Veterans Administration, these people get bonuses while the veterans can't get care. They get bonuses. And the Veterans Administration says, well, it's the only way you can keep these people who run the veteran homes is to give them bonuses. Really? Give me a good salary. I'll go run a veterans home. They'll be taken care of. And I'm sure there are many other people. The country is so corrupt, and this Pluto thing is exposing it all. It's exposing it. But it's not just Pluto. We have I have loads of papers here. Hold on a minute. I dropped them on the floor. Excuse me. There's, let me see if I have anything else about Trump. I said his path of destiny. Yeah, okay, I did. We did the United States, but this is what's even going on more. Also, he's a Gemini, and he has several planets in Cancer, which is the eighth house of the United States. So he's going to shore up the economy and money and make money for the United States, which he started to do already. And believe me, we need money here. He's also his Sun and his Uranus are in Gemini, which means the seventh house is like in a person's chart, it's your wife or your husband or your business partner or your face to the world. So he is in the seventh house. His Sun and Uranus are in the seventh house of the United States. So he's the United States' marriage partner or business partner. And he's going to work very hard on this economy. Nevertheless, because he knows what's about to come down. What's happening is there's a T-square between Pluto, Jupiter, and Uranus right now. So what that means, this T-square means the breakdown of the economy, underground economies, an underworld culture, empowerment of the collective. It created the support of a populist leader, which Trump is, and it's not going to just be Trump. It's going to be all over Europe. Marie Le Pen is climbing now in the polls. She's probably going to be elected. The guy in the Netherlands that was at the bottom, nobody would ever, they called him a racist. He's against the Muslim infiltration of Europe. Gert Wilder, I think his name is. He's now very popular. So France wants to pull out of the European Union. Italy is crashing, but they have enough gold. They want to pull out and get out of the European Union. The Netherlands will pull out of the European Union. Probably the whole European Union is going to go into dissolution. And they're, believe it or not, they're under an invasion there. The media doesn't talk about it. They're invaded. My very good friend, an ex-boyfriend, is a Jew who became a Muslim. His wife is a Muslim. He went to Paris a few years ago, so he loves Islam. He said Paris isn't Paris anymore. People don't want to go there. I met somebody in Woodstock who's a diehard liberal. She said, "You're right. I just came back from Paris and it's awful." And this is going on from all of Europe. Women are being raped. Crazy Merkel is allowing Sharia marriages where elderly men can marry children in Germany. This is Germany. Merkel's going to be out probably this year. She'll be out. The interests of the elite. Trump is going to this T-square will coerce other nations to enforce its own interests and stop taking care of, like it's the European Union or globalism or anything. And Trump is going to support all these populist leaders. He's going to go over to Europe a lot. He's going to support Le Pen. He's going to support Kurt Wilder. He's going to support them all to go their own way, to get rid of Merkel and all the globalists. And he is going to come up against the dark government. He's going to expose them all. The elite. He's going to expose them. He's going to fight them. This guy, I'm telling you, he has hormones that outreach the end of the universe. He is not afraid. He has no fear. He's courageous. He's bold. He's confident. And he's lining himself up with people like that. Like when people say, his Secretary of State, well, he's big oil. And look, now let's be reasonable. We all want to go on a cleaner way of oil. Saudi Arabia is running out of oil. Unfortunately, the whole world at this moment runs on oil. We cannot turn over into Tesla tomorrow. It's not going to happen. I live on a cliff in the Catskill Mountains. Right now, the trees are blowing back and forth like crazy. However, we can't have a windmill up here. There's not enough wind to make electricity. We're the only house open on a 3-acre property with 70,000 acres of Catskill Mountain, 100 feet from my front door, and the whole Hudson Valley, 20 feet off my back porch. And we don't get enough sun to use solar panels here. So, windmills use oil and they kill birds. So we have to go to more free energy, and perhaps that will happen. And all of Trump's hotels are environmentally sound. He takes that into consideration. Ivanka is a big environmentalist, and she is going to be in the White House. While Melania stays in New York, and Melania is, it's like James Joyce. Very, very, very brilliant men very often pick pretty simple women. It happens. that's who she is to him. But she also keeps him under control, as Ivanka does. And Ivanka is going to be in the White House with him. And she's a big environmentalist. She brought Al Gore to him. He met with Al Gore. Now, let me tell you something else about his chart that's very interesting. His planets are in the 10th, 11th, and 12th house. So he's got his sun in the 10th, at the end of the 10th, which makes it very powerful. And he's got a lot of planets in the 11th house. And the 11th house means that if you meet this guy, actually meet him and sit down and talk with him, you will like him, which is why he said to Meryl Streep, she doesn't even know me. I never even met her, because everybody who meets him likes him. I mean, he is the antithesis to Mike Pence. Mike Pence is so far away from Donald Trump, ideologically, that no one would believe he would become his vice president, but he met him and he spent time with him. And once he spent time with him, he saw how smart he was. He saw how sensitive he was. He saw that he liked this man. And Trump has a way of bringing people out, because nobody knew that Mike Pence rides a motorcycle until he became Trump's pick for vice president. Now he rides his motorcycle everywhere. Before, his motorcycle was in his proverbial closet. The other thing, he can make anybody like him. Once they meet him, they can sit down with him and they will like him. And he really is a genius. He's out of the box. He doesn't operate. That's why people say, well, he changes his mind. Yes, geniuses will change their mind. They will think one way this 1 minute until they get new information. Then they'll shift. And he can shift instantly because he has Uranus on the 10th house. He will shift instantly. The United States is a very Aquarian country, you know. The founding fathers, you know, and the great president, Benjamin Franklin was an astrologer. And apparently he was the one who put the chart of the United States when they should sign the Declaration of Independence. If it was signed at that time, nobody is ever quite sure. And he was an Aquarian. So there were a lot of Aquarians in the founding fathers. And Trump's chart is ruled by Uranus, which rules Aquarian. So he is a genius thinker. He thinks like geniuses think. He doesn't think. He's not a racist. It's so ridiculous. Maybe this is the time, and then we'll go back to what he's going to do this year, because it's really interesting. And, you know, he's not going to be able, he's going to try to save the dollar. He probably won't. There's going to be a global economic collapse to the extent it's going to be worse than the Depression. I mean, we are already at the level here in the United States of the level of the Great Depression. Our numbers are already that big. We didn't even have these many people starving as we do now. People don't know this. The media doesn't tell them. They cover it up. We have people living in tents all around California. People living in cars, you know. And I know people that, you know, have lost everything, houses, everything, during this last 8 years. And more than one, quite a few. Not only were we wiped out, but 32 of our friends, millions and millions and millions of dollars, life savings, kids pulled out of private schools, homes sold, co-ops sold, you know, people overnight having no money. And this is all, you know, they're taking money away from people. Anybody who fights, you know, that's why they're trying to ruin his businesses around the world. But I'm sure he has his money so taken care of, you know, but look what happens to him. Macy's stopped carrying his ties and whatever else he was selling there. And Macy's is now finished. They're closing their stores. Every time somebody does something to him, something happens. And the zero in the 40, with the 40 numerology, his life numerology, gives him God's protection. He is protected by God. My husband is like this. He's protected by God. I wish I had that. I'm ruled by Saturn. I have just like, you know, I think very deeply. I'm very smart, and you know, in the end it'll be okay. But Saturn is like, you know, whip, 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 beat you. I'll get you. I'll get you. You know, in the end, in the end, no matter what you go through, if you just know you're going through what you're going through, and when you come out of it, you will. You know this better than anybody, Alfred. You'll come out of it, and you'll be better than you were before. And actually, I should do your numerology one day just to see.
I would really love that.
Yeah, we'll talk, and then so let me read a little bit more about. Let me see if I covered Obama. He works with underhanded, crooked people. He should have been an actor. I bet you he winds up going out. He should go to Hollywood. He should stop staying in D.C., you know, and causing trouble. He's going to get himself in trouble. You know, he's building a wall around his house. I don't know if you noticed that, Obama, in his Washington.
I saw that.
The man against walls.
And he lives next to
Ivanka.
Podesta. Obama and Podesta are next door neighbors.
Oh God! Yikes! Well, you know, they can go to the play school together, wherever they go. Oh God! So with Uranus and Pluto in this opposition, there's going to be widespread radical and political social change, destructive upheaval, massive empowerment of radical revolutionary movement. So I don't know if people know this, but in 2011, there were 17 revolutions around the world. Who knew? I just found this out. During the Great Depression, 10,000 banks went under. 13 million people lost jobs. We have 95 million people out of work in the United States. 95 million. Some of them have dropped out of the Social Security. I don't know what they're doing, you know, running drugs, maybe across the border. I have no idea. So from 1960 to 1972, there was a Uranus-Pluto conjunction. During that time, because Uranus is a disruptor and Pluto is also a disruptor in a way, you saw the 60s counterculture, Malcolm X assassinated, race riots, Vietnam War escalates, sexual revolution, civil rights, Chinese Cultural Revolution, anti-Vietnam protests, riots in 68 at the convention, Democratic Convention, gay liberation, Woodstock, Dow drops 360 points. And in 1971, Nixon removed us from the gold standard. So the United States is no longer backed by gold. Nobody knows who took the gold. It's gone. Probably Putin has it. I understand he's collected a lot of gold. But it's fair. Oh, by the way, you know, Moscow is a Uranian city, so it's one of the reasons probably Trump likes it over there, because he has an alignment with them. And I'll have to do Putin's chart maybe for another time. So Obama's so-called recovery, there was no recovery. There's been no recovery. It's just a lie. It's like the 1792 bank panic. 1792, there was a bank panic in the United States. And 1820 and 1821, there was a deep depression. So it's kind of the way we are now. 207 to 220, economic stability and global stability now over. Since 2007, things began unraveling. Now, right now, 2017, it's quick and explosive, sudden dramatic upheaval, a reversal tipping of power, which you can see what's happened. Trump is going to dig all the sewage out of Washington, D.C. I'm telling you, there's going to be, D.C. is going to be completely, you see, he has picked powerful people around him, but the people he's picked around him, even though they may be generals, you know, they went to war, they're really good people in their soul. You know, like the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna tells, I keep forgetting names, God Almighty, tells the general who doesn't want to fight that his family is on the other side, because he doesn't want to kill his family. He says you have to fight because that's who you are. You're a general. So when somebody becomes a general, it's not like they choose to be a general. It's what they came in to do to be a general. But like Mad Dog Mattis is so loved by the Marines and the military that if they try to do anything to Trump, he's got the whole military with him. Now, there may be bad guys in the Pentagon and the military. I'm sure there are. But he's got good people with him. And the average military guy, for the most part, is a good guy. A lot of these kids who went to war across America so they could get their college diploma and have the government pay for it, these are kids from the middle of the country. These are good kids. They're good kids. They believe in the idea of America. You know, so Trump is going to be supported by the military, and he was smart enough to put them around him. Now, this oil guy that he wants to make Secretary of State, what I find interesting about this oil guy, first of all, he's brilliant. I mean, you want to know if somebody's brilliant and if they have ability to receive information from the universe, look at the size of their head, the size of their forehead. The guy has a huge head. It's like a bowling ball or bigger. So he's very smart. You don't get to be at the top of Exxon by being a sluggard. I mean, people say, oh, he has an elitist, look who he's picked, a billionaire. Well, who do you want them to pick? You know, a nice homeless guy from Times Square to be the Secretary of State? I mean, you pick somebody who's successful, who's been around the world. He gets along with Putin. Very important because these crazies want to go to war. You know, Obama just sent all of NATO on the borders of Russia. I mean, this is what Russian people are facing. And it was the United States that stirred up the problem in the Ukraine, not Putin. Putin didn't invade them. Putin just went in there to stop the invasion, which would have then been of Russia. He's just, he's protecting his own interests. So we need to use oil until we can make a transition. What I find interesting about this man, not only that Trump met him and likes him, so Trump likes winners, and the guy is obviously a winner. The guy was also an Eagle Scout, and what he does in his pastime is he coaches Eagle Scouts. So, Eagle Scout is the last leg of being a Boy Scout, and it's what most Eagle Scouts. Why most Boy Scouts never get to be Eagle Scouts. They go through all of the Boy Scout stuff that they, have to do. But when it comes to be an Eagle Scout, over 90% of them never go through being an Eagle Scout because they have to raise money and do a public project. And I know all about this because Richard's grandson is just becoming an Eagle Scout, and he hasn't done his public project. And he's been dilly-dallying with him, and he wants to get into the Coast Guard Academy for college. And if he is an Eagle Scout, he'd be more likely getting in because Eagle Scouts are known to be disciplined, honest, noble people. This is their history, and they usually do great things. So he hasn't finished, my grandson hasn't finished his Eagle Scout project. So it was about the money. So we said, okay, we'll pay for the stuff to finish it. Now he's supposed to be drafting the plans. We don't have them yet. It's been a month. So this is what this guy does. He coaches Eagle Scouts to get their Eagle Merit Badge. This is what he does. This is his hobby in his spare time. He coaches Eagle Scouts. So this is not like your bad dude who's just like evil. He's your smart dude. I'm sure he can do whatever is necessary to be a bad guy, like I'm sure Trump can. But that's not their nature. They just know how to operate there if they have to. And so I think he's an excellent choice. What they're going to do to Sessions the next couple of days is really despicable when he supposedly 30 years ago made insensitive racial comments when for the last 30 years he has been everything he's done to worked for Black people for the past 30 years. That's all he's done. Aside from, they never mentioned the fact that Hillary mentioned her mentor was Senator Byrd, who was a racist until the day he died. And Hillary threw a black chef out of the White House kitchen because he was black. Nobody talks about these things. That's like not, it's like the media has been totally taken over. And there's how many stations, and they're all owned. The Saudis own part of Fox Network. The Saudi Arabian prince own part of Fox. The Saudis own all the textbook publishing companies in America, and teachers have complained about this, that Christianity and Judaism are kind of disappearing from the history textbooks, and Muslim is getting pages and pages. Islam is getting pages and pages. That's because the Saudis own the textbook companies. You'll love this. Do you know at George Washington University, if you're a history major, you no longer have to study history. Can you imagine? This is a new thing. This is what they're doing. You see, the globalists are trying to take our history away. They're taking our history away. They're erasing our past, so we don't know about being patriots. We just know about being bobbing heads. Like in Woodstock, which is just like leftover hippies, they were all going to protest in New York and D.C. 150,000 women are going to D.C. the day after the inauguration. So my former art teacher, because I can now longer go to my art class, is allowing them to use her studio to make placards. And I said, how come you never marched about Benghazi? How come you never marched about the 6 illegal wars we're now involved in? How come no marching? And so the guy says, one guy answered me, is the ERA not enough to march about? I said, yes, but if you're here illegally, that is not equal rights amendment. It's not equality. You're here illegally, and criminals are here illegally. And Obama has allowed all these criminals to come out of jail now, all these guys who've committed felonies. We have gangs, Mexican gangs and cartels living in the United States. They're taking over small towns. I mean, this was a total intention. Now, the way I once heard it, because this whole global environmental thing started with the German guy who was the head of the atomic bomb project. What was his name, Alfred? You know all this stuff.
Anyway.
Well, whoever he was. Somebody out there knows it. He was the one who came up, we can't do these big wars anymore, so we have to do small wars. And we have to start a thing that we can bring the world under one thing, which will be an environmental crisis. So, when I got over of course, the world is polluted. I mean, there's no question about it. The ocean is polluted and everything. But this environmental change thing, when I went down to the Brazil conference, environmental conference, which I met my husband at, and Maurice Strong, who was a globalist and who actually said at one time, you can make a one world government through the UN. It would be very easy. This is how you do it. And this is what their intention. And he is a globalist. He was the chairperson of the Environmental Summit in Brazil. So we were all excited about the growing ozone hole. And we were all getting skin cancer, and God knows what was going to happen. It was going to radiate us all to death. And I, at the time, had a brilliant Russian friend, which you should interview. Believe me, you should interview. If you want to go on a wild ride, you should interview him. He's a Sanskrit scholar. He's a biochemist. He's a painter. He's written the most famous novel in the past 100 years in Russia, acclaimed by Russian newspapers and the literary elite in Russia. He's a healer. He's a real yogi. I clocked him holding his breath with the mirror under his nose at 33 minutes. And then he said I could go longer, but why waste our time? There's so much to do. I said to him, I was ranting about the ozone hole. And he said to me, what do you know about the ozone hole? And I said, well, I know it's getting bigger. And he said, how do you know that's dangerous? I said, well, because the scientist said, it was protecting us. He said, how do you know the growing ozone hole didn't knock down, the big hole in the ozone didn't knock down the Berlin Wall and end communism? And I said, you know what, Vadim? I don't know. And that ended the whole climate thing for me, because we don't know. We really don't know. Right now, it is freezing in this house. Freezing. My feet are so cold. I can't tell you. We have the stove on and the oil heat on. So that global climate thing, this is a whole, Al Gore made millions of dollars. That's what they gave Al Gore, because he gave the election and he stopped fighting and he gave it to Bush. So they gave him that, and he's made millions and millions of dollars and become a horrible human being. I used to like him, but anyway. So the USA is going to go through a psycho-spiritual economic death and rebirth.
And this will be over what time period?
I'm going to talk about the X factor. The X factor is something that happens in the usually in the second decade of every 100 years. So 217 is the same. William Stick Evers, who you should interview, a brilliant astrologer, and you should get his global forecast, because it details this much more than I'm going to. 217 will probably be the X factor. It's going to start in 217. It's going to get progressively worse and really be at its worst probably around 220. The Fed globally injected $16.7 trillion into the system. Obama says the recession is over. Obama is a pathological liar. I mean, his moon is on the cusp of Gemini. Every moon in Gemini person I ever met is a pathological liar, including my own nephew, if he's listening to this. He's very brilliant, but he's pathological. They can't help it. They just lie. And so he has moon in Gemini. 2012, Palestinian invited to UN. Now, before leaving, Kerry and Obama forced the globe to force Israel to withdraw from the 1967 territories. And Israel's not going to do it. It's not going to happen. And Israel's going to get more powerful out of this. Of course, Trump is going to back Israel. And maybe he'll find out something different later on, but that's what's going to happen initially. The mainstream media is just about finished here in this country. Things are deteriorating around the world. Since 2007, money has been injected globally into the system, in corporations, into banks, into the government, even into oil. We need to open up the oil here, because we're not going to get much more out of the Middle East. I mean, Saudi Arabia is actually going bankrupt. These rich oil guys, they're out of oil, and they're getting rid of their fancy cars and yachts and everything. China is in big trouble too. This Uranus-Pluto-Jupiter T-square is hitting the U.S. That's what happened in 2016. It will expose the oligarchy behind the government. The U.S. has been taken over by an elite oligarchy. We know that. It has been happening for a long time. Now it's in full force now. In November 2016, this is the mythology living played out by the collective unconscious. Remember, we're creating this. This is a collective unconscious. Now, from now on, remember the new Godzilla film that appeared in 2014? There was a new Godzilla film. The movie appeared, and William Stick Evers did this. So funny, because, just like I said, Obama, Pluto is the black god, Obama happens to be black, and the universe plays like that. CNN showed a picture simultaneously by accident of Godzilla and Trump. So William Stickevers saw that, and he's very psychic and lives in the mythological world as well. He started calling him Trumpzilla, and he was one of the few astrologers that said in the world that Trump was going to be president. And if you look at the myth of the movie, and if you think of Tokyo as the establishment, or the establishment anywhere, an establishment here, Godzilla destroyed the establishment, and Trumpzilla is going to destroy the establishment. That's what he's going to do. This film represents the Uranus-Pluto-Jupiter aspect. Buildings represent the establishment. I said that. Trump, or Trumpzilla, is the dark horse candidate. As Godzilla disrupted the establishment way of life, so has Trump done the same. You know, everybody in the country hates the media now. Everybody, except the bubbleheads in Hollywood. I mean, I've seen good journalists like Christian Amanpour. I used to love her. She was my idol. She was my heroine. She has turned into, you know, a wine guzzling, pinky ring diamond finger globalist. She's horrible. As I said, Nate Silver, who always predicts elections correctly, said Hillary would win. Huffington Post said, you know, they did. Nobody saw it coming because it's this Pluto-Uranus Jupiter thing that's happening. Voters voted for Trump for jobs, closing the borders, and against the global oligarchy, not racism. And you know, it's funny that you and I knew about the oligarchy. Really smart liberals knew about the oligarchy, and who were just kind of not really into any party. But who would think that the working middle class would get hip to the oligarchy, where the progressive liberals don't have a clue about them, except the ones running the show, that is. They don't have a clue. These kids that go to elite colleges and everything, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. They're all, you know, they're crying over Trump. These are kids in colleges. Think about when we grew up. These are kids in colleges who are so afraid about Trump that they have to bring puppies onto the school. So the kids could have puppies, crying rooms. It's crazy. They should all, you know what I think? As soon as kids, before they go to college, they should go be sent to the outskirts of Russia for a few years. You know, one of the weird places like Siberia, or, you know, see what it's like over there. See what life is like. Probably even in Moscow they would go crazy. Trump is a match for the oligarchy. He is not a shrinking violet like Obama, who caved to the oligarchy. He's a political maverick, not a neoconservative, and not a progressive liberal. He's a maverick. He's ruled by Uranus. Trump is going to push his agenda through in the first 100 days. That's what he's gonna do. It's gonna be like this. He's going to threaten, he's gonna control, he's gonna expose, and he's gonna do anything he has to do to get his agenda to. Up until the late summer and early fall, he's gonna fire the board of the Federal Reserve and put in his own people. He's going to inspire people to go back to the roots of our country, to the beginning. He's going to work as hard as he can to make everything work for the United States. He will use other countries. He will do everything he can to bring this country back. He loves this country. He loves the idea of America. You have to understand, he came from Queens, from Jamaica, Queens. It's like the most boring place in the world. I don't care if they had a nice house. It's a boring. And he moved into Manhattan, and he took $1 million that he had to pay back from his father and made it into $10 billion. And he believes that it was this country who allowed him to do it and give him the life he has. And maybe at this point it's a good time to tell you a story. I called my niece I'm in touch with her a lot now, and my niece is a really interesting person. Um, she's the vice president, senior vice president of all of Citicorp. She invented a computer program that she's the only one in the world that knows how to do it. So, although they're going to get rid of her too, she had 300 people working under her. She travels all over the world. She's a beautiful blonde, and she says, "Aunt Mary, I'm like Switzerland. I never get involved in any kind of drama." Never. She said, when my kids were growing up, she has a boy and a girl, and they both got into fights. They both went into their rooms. Not one, but both. So she has a friend who was, not too many years ago, driving along the Long Island Expressway in the pouring rain. And he saw a limousine parked there with a guy fixing the tire and another guy standing over him with an umbrella. And he stopped, her friend stopped, and said to them, "Can I help you?" And much to his surprise, it was Trump with the umbrella and the guy, his chauffeur. And he helped them fix the tire. And Trump asked for his name and address. And 2 weeks later, Trump sent him a $25,000 check. And when the guy called him up and said, "I can't accept this. Why'd you send this to me?" He said, "Because you helped us fix the tire." And the guy said, "I would have done it for anybody." He said, "No, you would have done it for anyone, but not anyone would have done it for anyone. And because you are that kind of person, I'm sure you could use that." The guy paid off his mortgage to his house. True story. Another true story, which I found out later. We had a very good friend that lived in our building when we were in Manhattan. He unfortunately died of cancer. He was Trump's lawyer for a while, very good friends with Trump. He was also a lawyer for the United States, a tax attorney. He traveled putting U.S. tax laws into countries around the world. He told us that Trump was, first of all, very brilliant, very kind, very generous person, and helped him out when he lost a lot of money. He helped them out, never took the money back. Trump has also flown poor, sick children who had no money across the country in his jet to the best doctors and paid for them many, many, many times. These are stories the mainstream media is not telling you because the mainstream media is owned by the global elite and they want to take Trump out. He and Michael Jackson used to help little kids. He saw once on TV, he was watching this widow. This was a human interest story many years ago. Her husband died and she had 5 children and she was going to lose their farm. And the bank had it. And Trump called the bank and said, "I want to buy the farm." And they told him no. And he had something on the bank, so he threatened them. So they sold him the farm. He took the lease and he gave it to the farmer's wife. The farmer's wife has since died. The 5 children came on the campaign trail with Trump and told the story, spoke for him. But I had heard this story before. So there's many, many stories, wonderful stories about him because he's very kind and he's actually very compassionate. Cancers are very compassionate. People who have cancer are very compassionate people, and he's very compassionate. You know about the black homeless person that lives in Trump Tower? Have you ever heard about her?
I don't know that.
Well, there was a black homeless person who's a little bit out of it, who's made her way into Trump Tower and got upstairs into like a small, like kind of like side room, maybe used for, who knows what, storing things or something. So she got in there, and a few days later, a cleaning woman found her, and they called the management, and who called the police, and they were going to escort her, of course, out of the hotel. And somebody notified Trump, and Trump came down and said, "No police, she will stay here for as long as she wants and get her something to eat. And he sent her down a big bouquet of flowers, which he has done. He feeds her 3 meals a day and sends her a big basket of flowers every week for the last 9 years.
Amazing.
She lives in Trump Towers. She lives there. Never threw her out. I don't know what he's waiting for, because I don't know all the immediate details of the story. But I used to work at his on Columbus Circle. One of his buildings are there, not Trump Tower, but another building, his co-op apartments. And I used to be a chef for one of the morning show people on CBS. Another story, maniac she was. Arrogant, egotistical. But anyway, I used to cook for her. And we all knew this story about this black woman that lived in this black homeless woman that lived in Trump Towers. It was like, it was a neighborhood story around there. He's going to really inspire the patriotism in the country, which he's done already. If you remember Kennedy's Secret Society speech in 1961, that speech?
Yes, I remember.
Right. So, that's the thing we have to, because Trump is coming up against a much more formidable deep state, much more entrenched and larger than Kennedy ever had. So that's the danger point. But then again, he's got the 0 behind the 4. He's protected by God.
Yeah. Now, could I ask you, because these are things that people ask me all the time, and talking about the deep state, there's kind of the archetype of the deep state, and his middle name is Alfred.
Right.
And that's Henry Kissinger. And because he is like Mr. Deep State, and he's like if we go back to 1971, you had mentioned earlier, Kissinger was the national security advisor to Nixon. So everything that went down during Nixon, Kissinger did, right?
Right.
And so now fast forward to Trump, and Trump went to Kissinger, and Kissinger put together Trump's cabinet, basically, or certain parts of it.
Well, maybe certain parts of it. I doubt it.
So no, wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let me ask you this, because
yes,
what we're trying to do here, I think, is to help people get through the duality.
Right.
And because everybody goes, look at this cabinet, look at Kissinger. In my world as a war crimes judge, Kissinger is like, he's like, if not Satan, he's like the right hand to Satan. He's like the archetype war crimes criminal. And yet here you have Trump, Trump basically said, okay, put together my cabinet, because a lot of the people in the Trump cabinet, Kissinger put together for him.
Well, we really don't know that.
Yeah.
We know that he met with Kissinger, but let's think about this. Let's look at Kissinger's background, because I thought about this, and I thought it was the thing you were going to ask. Kissinger was, just by luck as a bright student, maybe not even that bright. Who knows how bright he was? He was a box cutter in the Bronx in a factory. Do you know that?
Kissinger?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I thought that Kissinger, he was Army intelligence, and then he had become part of Operation Paperclip.
He worked in a box factory. He went, I believe, on to Hunter, and then
I see.
Harvard, and he was recommended to Rockefeller.
Yeah.
Now, you imagine being, and you're working as a box cutter, but you're smart, you know? Just you got to look at the psychology a little bit. You're smart, you're working as a box cutter. All of a sudden, you're working for Nelson Rockefeller. Then you get, to be advised to Nixon, I guess, right? To advise it to Nixon.
Yeah.
I worked for Rollins Smith. And being people of the heart and people of truth, like you are and I am, and probably a lot of people who ask you this question, we don't understand how people will go along to get along. But most people like that will go along to get along. Now, I thought Rollin used to take me everywhere. I was his right-hand person. And as soon as I stood up against him, that was the end of me. He brushed me off as if I was a dead mosquito on the table. And I worked for him for a long time. I made him go global. I put him on the, after the summit, Gorbachev-Reagan summit. That was the first time he ever went global, and he got a taste for it. I put him there. I gave him that job. And his makeup person said, the mistake you made about Rollin was that Rollin is a corporate guy. He's a corporate guy with a velvet glove, but he's a corporate guy. And so I used to ask him, how could you ever vote for Bush? Why? They do what they have to do to maintain the life they have. They may be a little evolved. They may not be. They may be totally, materialistic on the first level of kindergarten consciousness, and this world is all there is. Or there may be people, who jump in and out. Sometimes they're in higher consciousness, like Trump. I think, he went into higher consciousness. He was part of the material world. I think he's evolving upward. I think that's why the Black people and the pastors of the Black churches who are very psychic and they always keep the energy high, that's why they gravitate toward him. They feel him, they've talked to him and they feel him. And it's not only because they want to be successful, but they know that he's right about successful and that he's, this whole thing about you're fired, he goes straight for the jugular, this is it. That's it. So let's say, this is what I thought, this is what I got. That Kissinger wound up from being a box cutter to being, smart, and went to Hunter, did well, got to Harvard, and somebody from Harvard recommended him to Nelson Rockefeller. And then Nelson Rockefeller recommended him to Nixon. This is a box cutter, So, just like the general in the Bhagavad Gita, that was his job, that was his destiny. So Kissinger's destiny was to be where he was. He doesn't even know how he got there. Listen, I don't know how I got to live in the Catskills. I love New York City. I would never in a million years think that I'm going to come up here on a mountain cliff and live. But it was my destiny. And once I got over the shock and the crying and the hysteria and the missing of New York, I haven't been to New York in 2 years. I have no desire to go to New York. My husband went there the other day to see a client and he said, "You want to come?" I said, "No, what do I want to ride down there for and be in the crowd and the people and I'm totally alone here all the time." I never thought, all my paintings, if I took you around the house and showed you the paintings that I do now, they're kind of like cartoons, but they all have millions of people in them. My husband does a painting with a cabin in the mountain. There's nobody else around, and I do. So that was his destiny. So it was my destiny to be up here. So he, for a very long time when I worked for Rollin, I kept my mouth shut because I knew I was in a privileged position. Just like for a very long time at BAI, I kept my mouth shut until I didn't, because I'm like Trump. Eventually I go for the truth. And I opened my mouth, and they quartered me. They draw and quartered me and hung me out to dry. A place I had been at for years and years and years, raised a lot of money for and everything. So he kept his head down. He's a, he's the closest. There were two close people, Jews, who I knew got to the White House, close to the White House. One was Bertrand Brown, who was the psychiatrist to the president, and the other was Henry Kissinger. And so he kept his head down and he did what they told him he has to do and what he did. And what was he the architect? You know, because there was people above him. He's in a chain of command. The Rothschilds, as far as we know, are at the top of that pyramid.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more, but they own 3/4 of the world's wealth. They own interest in all the banks, or own all the banks. They own everything.
Yeah.
And they own all the people. You know, they have armies at their beck and call. So that's who he has above him. And so he's just what, you know, a castle on the chessboard, a knight, a pawn who did a good job. He's a hardworking, smart Jew. That's what he is. And I'm not anti-Semitic. Believe me, most of my friends think I'm Jewish somewhere. Maybe I am. I don't know. But he did what was needed to be done. Now, he's an elder statesman. He's really, really old, the guy. And maybe he sees something in Trump that he's old enough to be able to see. He's worldly enough and brilliant enough to have some clairvoyant, intuitive abilities. Maybe he sees something that's really good. Because he said, I think he might be the best president we've ever had. Do you know he said that?
I didn't know that.
Yes. And do you know, just think about it. Somebody who grew up poor like Kissinger, who made it big time. And you know, he never kind of really, he goes around and talks, but if you listen to him talk, even when he talks, you can't really understand what he says, Kissinger, because he doesn't really expose. He's very careful. And you know, maybe he's trying to flatter Trump. You know, maybe they know him that well, which I'm sure they do, because they have all kinds of psychotherapists at their beck and call to analyze people. That's what Bertram Brown, the president's shrink, used to do. They would, after he left, he didn't want to be in Clinton's administration because he told me when Clinton was elected, I said, Clinton asked him to be in his cabinet. I said, oh, Bert, are you going to do it? And he said, no way. And I said, why? And I said, you wouldn't be in the president's cabinet? He said, no, he's a dysfunctional personality and he's going to blow up his presidency. Voila. He didn't blow up his presidency. He almost blew up the world. He helped destroy the country. And Bert, after that, he didn't work in the government anymore. He started a business with a famous police psychologist where they would analyze, like, heads of state. You know, they would see videos of them and they would do their psychological profile. Like, he analyzed Gaddafi, and he got hired by Putin, actually. So it's like, you know, this is a big deal. Trump wants to work with Putin. I mean, the president's psychiatrist, the psychiatrist for the government of the United States, the world's most famous psychiatrist, he was known as, worked for Putin. Putin hired him to find out where $20 billion of gold bullion disappeared from, you know, out of the Kremlin. And so I said, how are you going to find that out? He said, well, this is how brilliant. Could you imagine thinking like this? He said, the first thing we did was look for where there was a lot of broken forklifts. Because to move that much gold, you would need to break forklifts. And they found where they were. Wow. And they found the gold. Could you imagine? That's how brilliant. Could you imagine thinking like that? So this is how brilliant these people are. He was so brilliant. He was scary, this guy, Bert Brown. He was brilliant. Oh. But he was also very good. And, you know, I was working at the Foundation for Global Broadcasting. Vince was there. You know Vince.
Oh, yeah.
He keeps everybody separated so nobody can really make friends. So he keeps control over everybody. And he, God, I hope he doesn't sue me in listening to this. So he was, I love you, Vince, wherever you are. He was living in this house with this other guy, and they built this technology, this cell phone technology. It was the first video phone. Now everybody has that, but this was the first prototype ever. These two guys couldn't get along. They were fighting all the time. And Bert Brown, the psychiatrist, had funded them and put a lot of investors and a lot of money in to build this prototype. And he was counseling them for 2 years and couldn't get them to get along. Now, Vince had another program going. They were going to do a global broadcast called Space, the Human Dimension, and which is a great project, by the way. We should try to reactivate it. It was how space is used in, like in surgeries now, and satellites are used. A surgeon can operate on a person from far away, And so we were working on raising the money and putting the script together for this global TV show. And Bert was the head of that foundation and the head of the company of Durago and this other guy. And they couldn't get along. And I was staying with them while they were there, and they were fighting. And I said, listen, I'm not going to stay in a house where you're fighting all the time. So we either have to get over this, or I'm going home and you can work on this project yourself. Now, up to that point, you and I had been the only people that had done a global anything.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing.
That radio show, the one we did, the first Earth run.
Yeah.
There was nothing like that in before.
Amazing.
And so I was Miss Global. No, they hadn't done anything. So they thought I had some magic wand, that I could do it. Well, first of all, half of my magic wand was missing. That was you. And the second thing was, I didn't have any magic wand. I just used to pray. I prayed. God, show me what to do. God, show me this. God, just show me. Please show me how to do this. And I would pray and pray and pray until I felt calm and I got an answer. So they said, please don't leave. Please don't leave. So I said, okay, every day, morning and night, we spend a half an hour in prayer before we go into the office and a half an hour at night. In 2 weeks, these guys, there was no more fighting. These guys got along. So Bert Brown comes over to me and he says, do you know who I am? So I said, yeah, I've heard. So he said, do you know that I'm known as the most famous psychiatrist in the world? So I said, yeah, I heard. So he said, do you know I've been counseling these guys for 2 years? I said, oh, really? Was it 2 years? He said, yeah, for 2 years, I couldn't get them to get along. And you're here 2 weeks and you got them getting along and everything's working perfectly. He said, how'd you do that? I said, I made them pray. They pray. We pray every day together. The whole office should pray. You should pray. So we became very good friends. And he liked me very much. He told me lots of things, which I'm really not at liberty to tell. He was a psychiatrist, but he, you know what he wanted to do with me? So this was a guy. First of all, I'll tell you one of the things he told me. He said, when I was your age, he was in his 70s at the time. I was in my 40s. He said, when I was your age, I went to parties and saw things and heard things which would make you run into the bathroom and throw up if I told you. That's what he told me. He knew J. Edgar Hoover. He knew the whole thing. He was in the deep state. He was there. Yet, he totally liked me. And you know what he wanted to work with me on? This was his pet project, the most famous psychiatrist in the world. I was so stupid, I thought I couldn't do it. I introduced my friend to him, who is a filmmaker. And after he met her, he said, I don't want to work with her. I don't want to have anything to do with her. I want to work with you. He said, when he told me that the president is the chief of the tribe and he's the president's shaman, he wanted to go around the world and produce a film where he interviewed all the shamans all around the world. That's what he wanted to do. That was his dream. And I was too insecure to say, okay, let's do it. I thought all I could do was, radio, and I was working on a script. And that same person who I introduced him to stole a script from me that the BBC wanted, but that's a whole other story. So he called her right. He met with her for 15 minutes, and he could read her up and down. That's how good he was reading at people. So I think, he was really a good person, didn't want to work with Clinton because he knew what Clinton was like. Wanted to work with me and not my friend because he read her and he read me. He knew he could trust me. He knew he couldn't trust her. And he knew that. And she wasn't trustworthy. I found that out. She stole several projects from me. And so there are people in the government who are like that. Like recently, just I heard the other day, Carter said that Obama was a terrible president. So Carter is like that. We know he was a good guy.
No.
And so Carter said that about Obama. And so there are people who work in there and do what they have to do, but they're really good guys. Maybe they're looking for ways out. People get scared. It's like a woman or a man who's in a very bad marriage. They know their husband is bad, their husband beats them up, but they can't leave. Because where are they going to go? I mean, where would Kissinger go? Where would he go other than where he was? In the most fabulous life, with all the money, all his expenses paid for, traveling all around the world, reading the world. I don't think I would leave. I might learn to keep my mouth shut if somebody put me there.
Right.
And to see how undercover you can influence things. Maybe not. Maybe he was too afraid to even do that. But there are people inside the government who are good people and are waiting. Do you think every one of those military people were happy? Yeah, there's a radical priest up here, Father John, hippie priest he lives in a little church. It's like so freezing in there. I don't know how he lives there. And he was coming from a meeting. He does stuff with the American Indians. So there's this march of horses from Canada. The Dakota Indians come from Canada and march all the way down through Woodstock, and their horses, and they take canoes and they go into New York. And he's arranged that every year. So he was at a meeting and he got sick of the meeting, as you do get sick of meetings like that. And he walked out to smoke a cigarette. And he's in his long cassock, and this old guy stops him and says, "Do you need a ride, Father?" And Father John says, "Where are you going?" I go to Woodstock. He says, "Sure, I'm going that way." So he gets in the car with the old guy, and the guy turns out to be the general for the Northeast National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells him that Obama is firing all the generals who won't weaken the United States military and take arms against the citizens. He's firing them all the upper echelon. He got rid of huge amounts of them. So he got rid of, just like, what's his name in Afghanistan, and the one that got caught with his girlfriend.
Yeah,
Stupidly.
Petraeus.
I would never trust him because he did that. I mean, that was so stupid. He doesn't deserve to be trusted. And he wasn't. Trump didn't pick him. And although he was very badly treated, if you compare him to what Hillary has done, there's no comparison. Or even what Clinton did in the White House. But so I think that that's what Trump sees in a person. Ivanka Trump tells a story that she told her father that she met the man she wanted to marry, that she was going out with him at the time. And Trump said to her, because he was a strict father, "I want to meet him." And she said, "Dad, please, don't say anything wrong. Don't insult him. I really like this guy." And she was hiding behind the wall, listening to what they were saying. Mm-hmm. How Trump was questioning him and talking to him. And then Trump came back and he said, and he actually figured out she was hiding behind the wall, and he called her. And he said, "He's a good guy. I like him. It's okay. You can stay with him." So Trump is he's got those two sevens. He's got a personality 7 and his soul 7. So he's very psychic. And I remember I sent you that thing by this pastoral counselor and psychologist who said that Trump is a genius. But not only is his IQ a genius, because he couldn't have graduated out of that military school at the level he graduated with under 160 IQ. He had to have 160 IQ or above. And so he's not only a genius with his IQ, but he thinks out of the box. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. They both hate him. The media hates him. The guy is a total, this is like who, he's a maverick.
So is Trump going to leave the United States off better than he found it?
He's going to try. Yeah, eventually he might not be in office anymore. But the because, the policies that he put in place, they're not going to take over right away. We're in a global economic collapse. China is collapsing. And you see, he is going to confront China about manipulating their currency. And they're not going to like it. They don't like it already. But they're destroying the United States and the rest of the world. And he's going to confront them about it. And they're going to have to raise their currency, or he's going to have them isolated with the rest of the world. And they're ready. Their housing has gone under. Their corporations are going bankrupt. People are going bankrupt. China is in a very bad way. They're in bigger debt than we are in the United States. So they're in a very bad way. And he's not a messiah. He's one of the reasons I think he goes around the country thanking people is because he wants to keep our energy up. And he wants us behind him. First of all, they want to kill him, that. And he wants us behind him. He's got the good military behind him. He's going to work with Putin, even though he's going to watch Putin, because Putin has to be watched too. Look what he came out of. It's not like he came out of heaven, with that. Although, he's very smart guy. They say he's not smart. And he was never the head of the KGB, by the way. That's another false story. He was a paper pusher in St. Petersburg. And he didn't even pass the spy school of the KGB. He got thrown out. His father was, and his grandfather were both. His grandfather was chef for Stalin, and so was his father.
Wow.
So, they had to be very careful people and very secretive and hold their cards to their chest. But he's very smart. He built 100 churches in Moscow. 100 churches he built. And the reason that he built them is, he said, because a strong Christian background gives you moral strength to the person, to the family, and to the country. It strengthens the country. Here we're emptying all the churches. We're breaking them down. And, maybe we'll have a new spirituality, which we should. I think everybody should be taught to meditate at a certain level in school. Martial arts and meditation. That would be really good. Martial arts, cooking, and meditation, then everybody would be okay. Astrologers, I could throw that in. But he is going to do his best to. But we're going. William Stickever says this, and I want to talk. I want to talk to you about this very interesting thing. Since the 5th century, they've been able to track and graph these things called X events. And they happen in the 2nd decade of each century, usually in the middle. So the rise and fall of empires, religious wars, outbreaks, major world wars happen during those times. So 217 may be an X event. If you go back, let me see how far I went back, where I started to go back. It goes back to, okay.
Yeah, 400, your camera just went off.
Again? Oh, okay.
For some reason.
Oh, the paper. His computer is very sensitive. It's new.
You're back on.
In 400 AD, the Visigoths sacked Rome. 100 years later, in 518, the Justinian Empire was dominant, a dominant world power. 100 years after that, was the rise of the Chinese civilization. In 711 AD, the Islamic invasion of Europe, 100 years. In 100 years after that, 814, Charlemagne dies and all of his kingdom falls apart and there's wars. His kingdom dissolves. 100 years after that, 912, the Holy Roman Empire rises. And Otto the Great becomes control of it. In 1013, the Vikings invade England. Let's see, where am I? 1013. And they lay the groundwork for William the Conqueror, the first king of England. 100 years later, the Knights Templar, who created the first banking system. 100 years later, the Magna Carta, which eventually gave birth to our Constitution and all constitutions around the world. So you see there's a progression. Even though things are terrible, it's progressive. 100 years later, Scotland, independence restored temporarily. Then, you go to, let me see, where am I now? There was the War of 1812, and then 100 years later, World War One, and very interesting things. Then this new French astrologer in 1939 came up with a very interesting graph. And I really urge you and everybody out there, I mean, I'm not making any money on this, to get William Stickover's Global 217 forecast. He's such a genius astrologer. He's like better than Nostradamus, really. This French astrologer, Garvin was his name, said there was going to be World War II in 1939. All the astrologers said there was not going to be any World War II in 1939. No World War II, no World War II. Well, we all know there was World War II. He graphed, he creates this graph that takes into consideration the angles of the outer planets, Neptune, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. He graphs their conjunctions and their opposition. It creates a graph on rising and falling peaks that predict all the events that have happened subsequently. So it looks like 217 is going to be an X event, and it's going to go from bad to worse. First of all, they're going to look what Obama has left Trump. Look what they're doing to him. They're accusing Russia of spying on us. McCain wants to go to war. McCain and Obama are on the same side. They put NATO troops. They threw out all the diplomats for no reason. They have no evidence that Russia affected the election. She was a terrible candidate. Terrible. She was sick. She was boring. She's like a stiff, she's no Clinton. She's no her husband, Bill. She's not that. And maybe she's a hard worker. I don't know. I think she's a schemer. I think she's a crook myself. And now she's going to be mayor of New York City. I can't believe it. She's going to run for mayor. So he's created this thing with Israel and the UN. Trump has to get them all under control. The Middle East is a mess. He's just given uranium to Iran. Trump has to deal with this. He has thrown a nuclear explosion at Trump and said, here, there's a cartoon on Facebook with a whole bunch of junk in it, like garbage, a big box, and Obama's handing it to Trump as Trump goes into the White House. That's what he's done to him. And that's what the Democrats are doing, calling him a racist. They're going to stop his cabinet. Despite the fact that conservatives and didn't like Obama and were very much against him and knew stuff about him. By the way, Neptune high on the chart like that usually people get involved in cults. And, Islam is more than just a religion. It's a political system. It's like a cult. It's everything in one package. It's just not this wonderful religion. Yes, there are parts of it that are very wonderful, but that's not the whole thing. That's the candy to get the baby in the door. So, and the whole White House is filled with Muslim Brotherhood. Valerie Jarrett, his right-hand woman, grew up in Iran. She's a Muslim. They pray. They have five prayers sessions a day in the White House. Do you know that? 5 Muslim prayer sessions.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so. Anyway, and even people who are not Muslim, if they're working there, they have to not do anything during that time. 5 times a day, all work stops.
Is that true?
Yes.
I have never seen that.
Yes, it's true. I'll send you some information on it. Okay. So it's good. We're going to. It's not going to be easy. Trump is going to do everything he can to shore up the dollar. This is going to very badly affect Brazil, India, and China. China has large debt, but he's not going to care about them. He's going to care about us, because either we all go down or one of us maybe doesn't go down. Trumpzilla is going to go after China like Godzilla went after Tokyo. Trump will force them to raise the yuan. If they don't do it, he will have them isolated. Um, they're totally into currency manipulation, and they've hurt us very badly. Russia is going to come into a big resurge. Russia is on the comeback, and it's going to flex its muscles. Canadian home prices are going to crash. France, Italy, the Netherlands want to pull out of the European Union. World is rising against globalism. There will be more populist revolts in Europe like Trump. There's going to be more people like Trump all over Europe and that are rise in their own governments. Italy is crashing. Populist is coming in. The last will be first. Merkel definitely will be out. The euro collapse is accelerating. Far-right Marie Le Pen is rising in France. Trump is going to back Le Pen and all the populists, and she's going to get rid of all the refugees. She doesn't want them. In fact, France is falling apart. I mean, it's so bad there. The Deutsche Bank, if the Deutsche Bank goes down, it will take all the world's banks with it, and they're in bad shape. We are currently seeing, whether you're looking or not, the collapse of the shadow banking system. And when Nixon took us off the gold standard, he put us on the petrodollar. Now Saudi Arabia is running out of oil, so we have to open our oil fields until something else can happen. By the way, this is the time, like the Great Depression, where people killed themselves and other people made millions. And also, it's a time for innovation. You know, it's going to be a big time for innovation. So all these inventions and everything are going to have a chance to, blossom. Palestine is not going to happen. The Israeli borders will stay. Israel will now become more emboldened. The Syrian war will continue, pulling in more nations. Saudi Arabia is in debt default. They're running out of oil. Turkey's Erdogan is Turkey's Hitler. The USA has been providing him with nuclear weapons to Erdogan, to Hitler. And they're talking about Trump. People call Trump Hitler. I mean, they're crazy. We are going to see the biggest shift in the government in D.C. The whole government is going to change. U.S. is going to confront China in the South China Sea. That's a little, I don't know, it's a little bit. Trump will confront China. He is not milquetoast like Obama. He is Trumpzilla. Remember, he's Trumpzilla. By accident, they flashed those two pictures on the screen, or not accident. Trump is going to put out his 100-day agenda. It's going to shock and freak people out. He's going to be okay until probably the summer or the end of the summer. Then I don't know. It doesn't look good. It didn't go that far. I want to talk to Stick Evers about it. But there's going to be some problem in the fall. But I really, I was into storing food too early. Now I have not enough money to store food. But I'm going to try to store like sprouts and grains or whatever people eat, that they should start little by little putting stuff away. Because the time that we were all thinking was going to happen is really now upon us. It's upon us. And what's going to happen is the left is going to blame Trump and his voters, and it's not Trump. This started in the 1970s, and it's been a slowly declining USA and slowly getting worse and worse and worse. And now it's here. It can't stand up anymore. Richard's business partner, my husband's business partner, used to say, Richard, the whole money system, the whole banking system is totally fake. It's totally fake. There's no money there. It's all digital. They stole all the money. They stole all the gold. They took it for themselves. It's all stolen. It's all stolen.
Right. So So, do you think that Trump has any cosmic consciousness? That does he understand any of this from a cosmic point of view? That this is sort of a process which is occurring. Uh, that is, what is his state of consciousness? Do you think?
Well, I think since he's accomplished all his life goals, um, you know, the last goal that you are to accomplish when you accomplish your life goals is service to humanity. He has his money handled. He has his relationship handled. How much more money do you need? Money and, that's all, it's all very nice, but it gets pretty boring fast. Golf is fun, but, you can't do that all the time. He has places all around the world. The next thing, Reagan told him to go into politics early on when he met Reagan. He said, you should go into politics. And he was waiting. Oprah asked him if he was ever going to run for president. And he said, if things get bad enough, I would strongly think about it. And the way he sees it, as things got bad enough, that he feels that he can fix it. Now, where does that come from? Is that just his ego? Or, God uses us. We're all, and remember, I said he's a 4-0, so he's got God behind him. So whether he thinks he's doing it himself, but behind him is God. Behind all of us is God. But I'm not a 4-0 or a 2-0 or a 3-0. I'm a 2 married to a 4, and that's my number, 24. And I'm a 6, so I care about beautiful things. I'm in service. I could be an actor, I could be a nurse, I could be a hairdresser, wherever I fit in. I happen to be a communicator, so my service comes through communication. Or I write recipes, healthy recipes for people, because I want to help them. But he was called. Whether called, he was called, and who are we called by? There's nobody here but God anyway, so we're all called by God. And I think he was very touched by meeting the people across the country. And you could see the way he treated them. When people got sick, he stopped everything. He made a doctor come out. He'd get off the podium and go down to see that the person was okay. I mean, he drove the Secret Service crazy. They couldn't, he's like Kennedy was, walking right in between the people. Kennedy used to do that. And the Secret Service didn't like it. And by the way, he's hired his own Secret Service. He ain't trusting the Secret Service. He's hired his own security.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and
yeah.
he also, don't forget, like people say the way he talks and he's so vulgar and everything. The guy grew up with illegals on construction sites. Have you ever been a woman? No, you have never been a woman, at least not this lifetime. But you ask any woman in New York who walked past a construction site, young woman, good-looking woman, even not so good-looking woman, if you didn't get catcalled, you felt insulted, because that's what construction workers do.
Right.
On lunchtime, they hang out and they whistle at women and they call, hey, baby, and they make remarks, And this is where he grew up since he was 5 years old. That's where he was. Yeah. That's why he's like that. But they also tend to be real people. They're real people. They care about people. They may be, they may not know the best opera. They may not be intellectuals, but they're people. They have families. They have people. They care. They fight for their friends. They're loyal. That's how he is. He's very loyal. He's a dog. He's a fire dog. Right. I'm a fire dog, so I know.
Right. Now, I just want to ask a few questions.
Yeah.
To look ahead into the Trump presidency and its challenges coming up. Like, right now, it seems like there's almost this automatic built-in division, right? Like, it's almost like the liberals have to get up and go, and create division rather than
Right.
go for a higher thought, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, and so Trump, I mean, I can see that he so far, so he responds kind of in kind and goes,
Right.
what do you mean? Now,
Right.
looking at his chart,
Mhm.
what do you think that Trump can do to sort of, or is there anything in this equation where the process can move beyond the duality and get more into the United States, like going to the next level?
The liberals have to do it. He
What?
can't do it. The
Sorry?
liberals have to do it. The liberals have to face up to the fact that Hillary was a bad candidate. They have to face up to the fact that the Russians didn't give Trump the election. That they have to face up to the fact, look, he went to talk to Middle America. She went to talk at Martha's Vineyard and Hollywood. That's where she was.
Yeah. But that's the campaign. That's something that
She wasn't. She didn't come to talk to the people. She didn't come. Do you know? What? Think of this. They have to admit it. They have to get rid of them and admit it. She goes to Virginia. She's sitting in a room with coal miners, and they have no work. They have no money. They're on welfare. Their families are not happy. Nobody's happy. And she tells them she's going to get rid of the coal industry. She's an idiot. That was a moronic thing to do. She lost Virginia because of that.
You mean West Virginia?
West Virginia.
Yeah.
She lost it because of that.
Right,
she was
right.
an idiot. And they need to see that. And the media, they're going to come and listen. They can keep creating. Remember, this is Trumpzilla. Really.
Mm-hmm.
This is mythology. He is going ahead. They can there with their guns, shooting him down with all these lies. They can have their tanks, which are all their stories. They can have their wars. And he is going ahead. He is Trumpzilla. He has had his cabinet put together way before Obama did. Way before Obama did. Obama didn't have his whole cabinet together until after he was in the White House. And they're going to do everything to stop him. And he is going to, and he has the physical energy, the emotional energy, the confidence, the brilliance to come at them in any way he can. You see, when he said about McCain that he didn't like McCain because McCain was a loser. He only liked winners. And everybody flipped out. How could you say he's a war hero? McCain is a terrible person. He was a traitor. He was a traitor in Vietnam. He gave up information to the Viet Cong. And do you know that before that, when he's an admiral's son, McCain was being a hotshot. He was a pilot, and he took a jet, and he recklessly, too fast, landed, because he used to fly like that intentionally, because he was a hotshot and an admiral's son, landed the jet on the aircraft carrier and killed a whole bunch of guys. A whole bunch of seamen. McCain is a creep. And so Trump knew that story. I know he knew that story. How do I know? I just know by the way he responded. He's a loser. Yeah, he's a loser. Not because he was tortured in Vietnam. Because he gave up his character while there were guys there who went to their death being tortured. And I'm not saying I would. I might have done the same thing. I might have given them the whole laundry basket. I'm not judging him. But Trump knew it, and that's why he said it. And McCain hates him for that. Right. So they're going to keep on hating, and he's going to keep on going. He's Trumpzilla. And I am sure that he knows enough about all of them Because, you know, even the ones that were against him will come up and start kissing up. Of course, there are those types too. And they'll give him information. And by the time he's along the way, he'll know about everything. And he'll threaten them, he'll control them, he'll expose them. And he'll keep doing everything he can to save this country. And ultimately save the world. He's Jupiter, the sun god, don't forget. And he's even older than Jupiter, because Uranus was Cronus. So he's even an older god. He's an older god. He's got Uranus on the midheaven, even closer to the midheaven than his sun. Sorry, that's my dog, Tiny, fire dog, see. Big bark all the time. So he's going to do everything he can. I mean, I have to look further into the year. I would urge you really to interview Stick Evers if you can.
Okay.
Find him on Facebook because he's such a genius. And he says, you know, now is the time to invest in gold if you can, and silver and Bitcoin, you know, to protect yourself, because the dollar is, you know, if you can, you know, or, you know, just protect yourself with God, you know, which is my intention. I'm going to just kind of heighten my consciousness the way your guest said the other day. That's what we've been doing since we were up here, to get us out of the debacle that the government put us in.
Right.
We just meditated and prayed and meditated and prayed and meditated, and, you know, our practice is growing, and, you know, our life is back on foot, like
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you know?
Now, do you and Richard have a website that people can contact you through, or an email, or?
I have an email. I can give you mine,
Yeah.
which is the arcserveprodigy.net.
Okay.
It's ARKSERVE at prodigy.net. And I do have a thing that when I was doing the radio cooking show, I have a thing called Cosmic Cooking with Mary Houston Facebook page, but it's mainly like food and health and things like that. But and I used to do astrology on the radio show. I don't do much on the Facebook page now, but yeah, you can contact us. Sure.
Right. Do you so just as kind of a because we're starting to come to the end of the program now.
Right.
This is actually the longest interview that we've done at Exopolitics TV. We're now 3 hours and 7 minutes.
Oh my God. Well, I don't know what you want to do with that, but you start me talking after I've had it.
No, it's great. It's great. Now
I have 1 or 2 mates, and you know, I'm really into mate. I drink a mate and I'm off. You know, you just send me off.
Could you leave our audience with kind of a couple of summary thoughts, maybe, about what is happening now in 2017, and how to think, what is their most positive thought that they can think about Trump coming in and 2017, and how to align themselves for maximal growth?
Okay. You know, I saw and see who he is. I see his faults and I see his excellent good points. The world economy is in a really desperate place. The guy is a businessman. He's not an insider. He's a businessman. He wants to put the country back on track. He's found the smartest, most capable people to surround him and protect him, because he's going against the globalists, which we all should be against. And people who are supporting the Democratic agenda now, or the liberal agenda, they're like the patriots who wouldn't fight against Great Britain. Great Britain was the globalist entity at the time, and the founding fathers and the patriots were fighting against them. And the liberals are those who won't fight. They're either too weak, too afraid, or too bought out, or too stupid. And they'd rather stay with Great Britain. You know, that's what it would be. They would rather have the comfort of the boot upon them and be taken care of than to individuate themselves. These kids are not individuated. You know, look at you. Look how you, from your generation, and my husband, and me, who was a little younger, how we individuated ourselves. We were total mavericks. He's a total maverick. You're a total maverick. I was a maverick. You know, these kids are not mavericks. They're crying because Trump is elected. It's crazy. They've been fed baloney by the mainstream media and the Democratic Party, and they bought it. So here we go. Trump is not a messiah, like Obama was, the false messiah, not a messiah. It's all about you. It's you. Be the Lord of your universe. Your universe is what you look out at and how you see it. So I don't focus. I look at Trump and I say, we need a person for the economy. He's building the economy. He knows the economy around the globe is falling. And, you know, we'll be starving to death if somebody doesn't come in and fix it. Who's going to fix it? Hillary? No way. She was going to let it. She was going to accelerate it. He wants to change it. He wants to. So you have to focus on that. At the same time, you have to make America great again. You have to, you know, in this country, if you're in this country or wherever you are, you have to get on the right side of this. And you see, it's either we individuate or we're going to be slaves. We're going to be under the boot of the globalists. They don't care about us. They don't understand. I mean, did you hear the thing Meryl Streep said about if you don't have us and the journalists, you'll all be watching football and martial arts? Well, that was the same kind of remark Hillary made, that the people who watch football and martial arts are deplorables. I mean, they're living in an elitist bubble that most of us are not a part of. And we need to get behind our president. Listen, I didn't like Obama. I didn't go, you know, I did my little thing that I did, probably more than other people did. But I didn't go out and make up lies about him and make stories up about him. And, you know, the conservatives didn't try to start wars to make him look bad. So we need to start looking at this correctly. There's a reason that the majority of the population voted in not only Trump, not only did he win the Electoral College, in truth, he won the popular vote, because it was only Clinton's vote in California that got her in, and they never asked for ID in California to vote. So we don't know who voted in California. And we know California goes liberal. So she only won, the popular vote, she only won there. When they did the recounts in Michigan and Wisconsin, she didn't win. She actually lost votes. So really, in truth, he won the popular vote. And we know that the voting was rigged. You know, Bernie would have beat her. Bernie took the payoff. So we need to know that we got, and since, you know, I read to you all those 100-year things that happen on the X thing, that
Right.
even though things look bad, which to people they look bad, they always move forward. They always lead to the next thing. And the next thing is always better. Even if it's bad, it's better. So we need to keep, and we need to clear our consciousness and get out of good and evil. Trump is not going to save me. Right. If my supermarket closes here, I better have my stuff together, either on the material level or in my consciousness, that I can manifest things. You know, that the universe will lead me through this time. It just led me through a time where I lost every penny I ever put together in my life, and I had nothing. I thought my family was gonna go into a shelter, just like 5 years ago. I thought we were gonna go live in a shelter. That was my choice: shelter or street. That's what I was like for a year and a half. And, you know, and I was taken care of. Somehow I was taken care of. I lived in a luxury building with 7 rooms on West End Avenue with, you know, 10-foot ceilings, a beautiful apartment, gorgeous apartment, doorman, the whole thing, huge rent. And overnight, I had no money. The government took everything I owned. They blocked my bank account, took everything I owned. And I should have been thrown in the street. I had an Orthodox Jew landlord who let me stay there for a year without paying rent. A year. Can you imagine? We were taken care of every step of the way. I got a great lawyer for free. Another lawyer, our other lawyer offered us $10,000 to move because we had no money. When does a lawyer offer you money, his client money to move? When? Never happens. And everything was taken care of. So you have to know that there is a force. You want to call it the force. You want to call it love. You want to call it God. You want to call it Christ, Krishna. I don't care what it's taking care of you. And you need to connect with that. Because if you connect with that, you'll be taken care of. Otherwise, you better have a lot of food, a lot of gold, a lot of money, Bitcoin, silver, something that you can take care of yourself. So you got to do it one way or another. And fear, I'll tell you, I know without a shadow of a doubt, there's, where is it? In the book of Solomon, it says, in the book of Job, the thing you fear has come upon you. And I was so afraid of Obama that he was going to destroy the country that in my own consciousness, I destroyed my life because I was that frightened. I was living in fear every day of what he was doing. I knew what he was doing. I saw it. He was not the Messiah to me. I saw it. And I felt it psychically. He made me sick when I saw what he did. He started all this race riots in the United States. He started it. This is worse than, this is not what Martin Luther King said. Black Lives Matter, kill white people, kill cops. Martin Luther King didn't say that. That wasn't his dream. This is Obama's dream. This is a globalist dream. This is to kill people off and to create division in the country, to bring the United States down because they could no longer control the United States, was out of control, and they have control all over the world. They controlled Europe. They had control. They had the European Union. It was already the beginning of a globalist government. They took all their nationalities away, open borders, and that's what they wanted to do with us. And Cruz was the same thing. He's a globalist. His wife, is a globalist. So they wanted to open up the borders here and just make it, so they can control people that way. Do you think that this, just to think about this, about, people who have heart for the poor refugees, of course I feel for them, and there's a lot of innocent people over there getting killed. Nobody dies anyway. We all, go beyond the matrix and we're all alive anyway. But in this world, it appears that way, and there's horrible suffering. But Carson, Dr. Carson went to Syria and he interviewed the people. These people do not want to come to America. They do not want to go to Europe. There are refugee camps in Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Jordan wants $2 billion from Obama to allow the Syrians to stay in the refugee camps. Obama won't give it to them. So those people, they want to stay in near their own culture. They don't want to come to the United States. They're totally alienated over here. They don't want to be here. If my country fell down, do you think I'd want to go live in where?
Syria.
Syria? No, I wouldn't. I'd want to go to Canada if Canada wanted to take me. I wouldn't want to go to Syria. So this is totally planned. It was intentional. So Trump should give them the money, which he said he's going to do, provide them with safe spaces over there where they can stay amongst their own culture. And let them stay there and be happy. They want to stay there. The regular people, the Muslims over there, told that to Dr. Carson. He interviewed them. He went there to find out for himself. So we need to see that what Trump's doing is not bad. We need to trust. People lost a lot of trust because all the people who didn't trust Trump now trusted Obama. And those who were really smart saw what he did, which was not the good news. So now they don't trust. And they think he's some just rich elite guy. He's not that. His numerology is not that. His Chinese astrology is not that. His chart is not that. Look at his children. Look at his children. Look at what a close family tie they all have. Look at how they adore their father. Look how successful they are. Look at Eric Trump, who raised $6 million for the St. Jude Hospital. The money that they give. Look at them. Look at the fact that he pays women executives equal to men, that he has more women executives than male executives and more women executives in a company of his size. Look at that he gave a woman the first construction supervisor job in history. He hired women supervisors. Now there are women construction supervisors all over the country. He did that. He started that. Look at the facts. Stop believing the mainstream media. Don't watch them, really, all of them. Even Fox, they're totally baloney. Bill O'Reilly has got to be the biggest snake in the grass. He's a Scorpio. How he manages to slide through them all, the lefties and the right-wing conservatives, is amazing to me. You should watch out if he ever gets to be president. That's really trouble. But this is a guy you could trust, and you've got to trust yourself. You've got to go. It's time for your community to get together to help each other. If people need food, you should start food storage. You should start food clubs where you can start buying food wholesale and storing it and helping people, because economies are in trouble. People are in trouble. You can't take care of your neighbor if you can't take care of yourself. And the way I take care of myself is like, I try to surrender every day. I get up in the morning, and the first thing I try to say is, God is my mind, God is my day, God is my body, God is my life. I don't even exist, just like, okay, and try to remember that as I go through the day. And whatever you do that, to start groups, to get together, not to cry together, not to be in fear, not to be hysterical, but to strengthen yourself in some kind of faith, whether it's the power of positive thinking, and meditate to raise your vibrational level. There's so many music and everything now online that you can just tune into to raise your vibration. And if you have to do it for 5 minutes every hour, sometimes, after what happened to us, I had to do it I had a headset on all night long and all day long, listening to tapes of spiritual teachers. That's what I did for the first year, and cry when I got up every morning. But I got through it, and I'm stronger now, and I'm not afraid. And this is a good man who waited for the right time. He came forth to save America. He doesn't have to do this. He has the life of Riley, so to speak. Not O'Reilly, Riley. He has plenty of bucks. He has a beautiful wife. He has wonderful kids. He can travel around the world. He has an interesting business. He's a great grandfather. He loves his grandchildren. They love him. If you want to see who a man is, look at his family. Look at his children. They're his children. He raised them. They all work in the business. They're all smart. Ivanka put the hotel together in Washington, D.C. She's really smart. She married a real smart guy. This is a good family. And he's a good man. And it's not that he's not going to make mistakes. Sometimes I go, ugh, like this. When I see him say something, I go, oh, probably you shouldn't have said that. But, he also makes me laugh. And I think we're going to all have to work hard. If we're going to get together with your neighbors, please start food clubs. That's practical, okay? So there's food. If you live in a warm climate, you could grow stuff and start storing it, jarring things. Do those things. But keep your vibration elevated, and don't let the fear mongers, the global elite, have put us into fear intentionally. The killing of Kennedy, the killing of Robert Kennedy, the killing of Martin Luther King, the downing of the World Trade Center. They put us in enormous existential fear so they can control us. They can only control us if we're in fear. Trump is not in fear. He can't, no matter what they do to him, there'll be another one after him. There'll be somebody like him. The universe has always sent somebody. It never let us go all the way down the drain. However long all the wars have been going on, we always keep going upward. slowly, sometimes slowly. It's accelerating though. And it's not that, breakdown before breakthrough. So we're moving into breakdown now. Just prepare yourself, you know, the best you can. Get involved in an underground economy. Be careful, you know. Um, they did it in Russia, when there were people who survived very well in Russia. I was there when their whole economy broke down. There was an underground economy. You could go to the bank and get rubles, 5 for $1, or you could go to the underground bookie and get 20 rubles for $1. And if you were lucky, 25 rubles for $1, you know, and you, and they learned to help their neighbors. So one person went to the meat market and bought meat for him and his neighbor, while the neighbor went to the milk dairy store and bought milk for their neighbor, And the one thing I loved about Russia so much, which I felt we didn't have here, it reminded me of when I was young and with my grandmother, and the whole family gathered together and we would talk around the table. That was their entertainment. They didn't get on their video boxes or their TV. We all met in one another's houses, and we talked and we shared food, and they helped each other. They helped each other with food. They helped each other with watching their kids. And that's what we have to do now. That's the real enlightenment. That's the Christ consciousness. We are one. You said the other day that the golden age is coming. It is coming. I hope it comes, and I'm here to see it. It might not. We may be just the ones going through. But the way we're going to get there is if we who understand higher consciousness, is we keep our consciousness in the higher and not get diverted. I see somebody on the news that gets killed. I say there's only God there. It's all God. They're all going to God. It's all God. It's all God. This is a dream we're dreaming. To just keep reminding myself and not get caught up emotionally, because you manifest through your emotions, not to get caught up in my emotions of, oh my God, how horrible. Oh, that's a terrible thing. You can have compassion without having fear. You can help people without having fear. So you got to keep yourself up. You got to stay beyond the good and evil. Trump is not God, or they're all gods. We're all gods, but he's not the Messiah. We have to make it great again. Individually in our own lives, we have to clean up our consciousness and stop playing in both worlds. Either we're going to be in the deep state, or we're going to be in the light state, in the dark state or the light state. You can't be in both at the same time. Anyway, it's only one. Beyond the deep state and the light state is the God state. And that's where we got to hang out. So that's what I have to say. And that's it.
Well, thank you, Mary. And thank you for taking the time out to join us today. And thank you for all your work over the years and
you too.
all your experience.
You too, Alfred. I mean, somehow the universe brought us together, and we really were on a very, all the psychics in Russia told me we really did, we helped to open up the Soviet Union. We did that to the world, that there were people there, real people with hearts.
That's wonderful.
I have one last small story.
Sure.
When I worked on the TV show at Gospel Radio, I met this woman producer, and I told her how we used to have to hide under the desks in school because the Russians were going to bomb us, and how I was afraid to come to the Soviet Union because there was like this big black spot in my consciousness whenever I thought about Russia. And she looked at me. She was very smart. She was a woman producer, and she got all tears in her eyes. She said, I never thought of Americans as anything but my friends. We fought the same war together. We fought the Nazis together. I always thought America was my friend. That's how brainwashed we were here.
Right.
So
exactly.
Don't let them do it again.
Exactly. Well, good.
Okay. I love you.
Thank you so much. And I hope that from time to time, as Trumpzilla moves forward, we can check in with you for a checkup on how we're doing.
I'm watching it. I'm watching him carefully.
Okay, Good enough then. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good night.
Bye.